I'm sorry, what did you say? All right, it is 9 o'clock and this board meeting will come to order. The first thing is roll call, and it looks like everyone is here. All the trustees, our treasurer is not here. Our board attorney is here. And we will start with the pledge of allegiance. Let's get your flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, and we will take public comment. Speakers should state name and community and speak for no more than 3 minutes. Persons addressing the board are expected to observe a level of civility and decorum appropriate for a public meeting. No personal attacks or disruptions from audience members will be tolerated. All right, and first up, we have Mariana Cochran.
Morning. Contrary to its motto stated in 1892 of offering the best reading, the American Library Association has devolved into a well-funded activist organization that promotes far-left Marxist policies in public libraries and is now led by a self-proclaimed socialist lesbian Marxist. Their promoted content for kids includes graphic, sexually explicit materials, LGBT and transgender propaganda, and divisive racial ideologies such as critical race theory. Through the ALA's efforts, books have become weaponized against kids to corrupt their minds, bodies, and spirits. Following are just a sliver of their methods and mechanisms. ALA's flagship publication and voice of the profession, American Libraries Magazine, advocated for drag queen story time as far back as 2017. In May 2020, ALA's director of the Office for Intellectual Freedom was on a training webinar and declared ALA's strategy to address public pushback regarding sexualized books for kids, quote, "We found that what needs to happen most is sustained messaging that reframes the issue, that takes it away from the idea that these are inappropriate for minors or sexually explicit and promotes them as diverse materials and programming that are about inclusion." And there it is, the spin, the deflection, the obfuscation. For Joe Biden's 2021 Inauguration Day, the ALA wrote a letter to the Biden-Harris transition team declaring their intentions in partnership with the new administration, quote, "The transition to President-elect Biden's leadership comes at a moment of great consequence when inequities in the American education system have been exacerbated. We are educators and librarians who believe this is also a moment of opportunity to shape the future of education for a stronger, more equitable and just society." According to the National Center for Education Statistics, student reading proficiency dropped 5 points as of 2022, the largest drop in over 30 years. But instead of working to improve kids' reading abilities, the woke agenda is paramount at ALA, as evidenced by their trumpeting of identity politics via lengthy and abundant equity, diversity, and inclusion strategic plans and statements. ALA's conferences have featured self-admitted heroin-using and renowned CRT advocate Ibram X. Kendi as a keynote speaker twice in the last 3 years. And the opening speaker at this year's summer conference was the OG of teen book hypersexualization, Judy Blume, who mainstreamed sex books for kids, for teens in the 1970s. The means and methods manifest by the ALA's unabashed and unrelenting priorities will continue to be amplified under its new president, who declared at the September 2023 Socialism Conference, quote, "Libraries need to be a site of socialistic organizing." Where is the focus on improved reading performance for kids in light of almost record low academic performance? Instead, the emphasis is on sexual performance, identity politics, and racial deconstruction of this country. In closing, disaffiliation, disentanglement, disassociation, and discarding the ALA is essential to begin to repair the damage they have wrought on kids, return CLN to our community, and make reading great again for kids. All right, next we have Jeff Lewis.
Jeff Lewis, Post Falls. I'm here today asking the board to disaffiliate from the American Library Association. The ALA's election of a self-avowed Marxist with goals to queer the library is incompatible with the values of many tax-paying Americans who are now watching their money be put to work against their values. The ALA president called conservatives, quote, far-right, white supremacist fascists, and described those who oppose inappropriate books in libraries as the, quote, Christo-fascist right. As a result of these attacks, we conservatives are fighting back. The fact that the ALA director would boast about her Marxist ideology is stunning because the goal is to destroy Western civilization. Anywhere that Marxism has been implemented through history results in tremendous suffering and destruction. The communist systems of Mao, Lenin, Stalin, and now Putin, all inspired by Karl Marx, have carried out bloody campaigns to target, isolate, and destroy elements of society in China, Russia, Korea, Southeast Asia, and now the Ukraine. Here are some Marxist quotes. It abolishes eternal truths, abolishes all religion, abolishes all morality. Instead of constituting them on a new basis, it therefore acts in contradiction to all past historical experience. The Communist Manifesto, English translation, page 40. The philosophy of Marxism, Leninism, the theoretical foundation of the Communist Party is incompatible with religion. The Young Bolshevik, number 5 and 6, page 58. Quote, it is in the schools, at the desk, in the first class that the foundations for a communist outlook are laid in future Soviet citizens. The country entrusts the school with its most treasured possessions, its children, and no one should be allowed in the slightest deviation from the principles of the communist upbringing of the new generation. Literary Gazette, September 1949. Library chapters in Texas, Arizona, South Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wyoming, Georgia, Montana, Mississippi, and now Idaho are now moving to part ways with the ALA, a decision made easier by the fact that a new library association has been created to give the ALA some long overdue competition. The World Library Association, WLA, is a more conservative organization whose leadership is mindful of what content needs to be made available for kids in public and school libraries and what doesn't need to be made available. The organization's goal is to foster safe environments for librarians, curate valuable reading materials for children, and maintain a public space that promotes information literacy and political neutrality. The problem with the ALA is that with 40,000 or so members, there are probably thousands like Emily Drabinski who would promote the same extremist communist agenda if elected president. She is not an anomaly. She is not alone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Phyllis Johnston.
Because of balance problems, can I sit over here?
Yeah, if you,
I'll speak up.
We can
Okay.
help you, escort you to the microphone if that would help.
I'll just sit here if it's okay. My name is Phyllis Johnstone and I'm from Kingston. I'm here this morning just to try to prevent further cuts to our library. I'm here to support the library in our community here. I feel that this is the heart of our community since we have no senior citizen center or restaurants that have meeting rooms for us. I feel that this is a good use of our tax money. I don't really need the jails or sheriffs too much, but I do need our library. This is a place for the senior citizens and the community members for learning. It's a place for our entertainment. It's a place of fellowship. We enjoy the staff support with keeping us up to date with our gizmos and technical things. So the helpers and employees here, the girls that run the library, are just wonderful at helping us old people get on Libby and manipulating the things that we need to do. And we appreciate them and support them. Thank you.
thank you. Great job having your voice, Carrie. Next, we have Regina McCrae.
Good morning, Regina McCree, Post Falls. I don't have any remarks prepared, but when I saw there was kind of a short list of people signed up to speak, then I added my name to address the material selection policy. As this board knows, based on correspondence I've previously directed to you, government exists to solve problems. You must identify what the problem is before you before you can start to attempt to correct that. So my question to this board is, what problem are you trying to solve by bringing the material selection policy forward and putting that on the agenda? It was last updated in November of 2022, so it is very recent. It, by its terms, it is to be looked at every 3 years. You are, bringing that forward quite promptly. I don't know why my microphone keeps cutting it out. Anyway, you are bringing that forward very promptly, and it appears arbitrary. Two of you ran on the platform of wanting to protect children, yet rather than ask the director for an update on the library card for minors policy that this board recently implemented, I think it would be productive and important for this board to take a look at the library card for minors policy and get an update as to its implementation and how is that going and how many members of the public have taken advantage of getting a card for their minor child. And so it's frankly, as I said, disingenuous to indicate that you are worried about the children when you're not even taking up the fact that this board has a library card for minors policy put in place. Instead, the changes that you are looking at with respect to the material selection policy apply to everyone, apply to adults, apply across the board. And there is nothing in the proposed changes to the material selection policy that address protecting an individual's right to full access to information or equal access for all to the library. The last point I want to make is that the government is designed to move slowly for a reason. Your current, what you have in front of you is just limited to future acquisition, but yet the library must also weed material and it must also provide the public an opportunity to challenge material. So I would urge you not to pass a policy piecemeal when you're leaving very big, important components out of that policy in your haste to just move forward and implement changes you want to see.
Right, thank you. That concludes our public speaking portion. Step down, please. All right, and next we will have the Pinehurst Library Report.
Thanks, Michelle. Okay, so this library 2023 edition. So, thank you. Today we're going to talk about Pinehurst and some of the communities around us. We're going to touch on some of the quick library statistics. We're also going to revisit the history of Pinehurst by request of a former Pinehurst-Kingston Library District Director. So let's see, then we're going to introduce you to the staff of Pinehurst Library, including a non-staff member who kept things hopping over the winter this year. We're going to look at some of the programs we've had over the past year and look at what an adult program is. And we're also going to talk about some of the changes that have happened to our space. So Pinehurst is a community of 1,783 people in 1.05 square miles. The Pinehurst is a town filled with homes, churches, small family-owned businesses, and a golf course. We squeeze it all in. We tend to have families and retirees. And my favorite weird fact about Pinehurst is that we used to have a racetrack for racing cars way back in the day. let's see, the best place to get a burger in town is the Tall Pine, because I know we're gonna be finishing up right about the time the lunchtime's hitting. Highly recommend. And if you're looking for coffee, and I know Alexa was looking for coffee this morning, but Brewed Awakening at the end of town, fabulous. Okay. Oh, there we go. Sorry. Also Pinehurst is super walkable. We have sidewalks on both sides of Division Street, and coming to work and leaving, we see people walking up and down the roads all the time. In fact, we have people who walk to the library or ride their bikes to the library, which is kind of cool. And then we have Kingston, which is our next door neighbor to the west. People from out of town may just think of Kingston as that freeway exit you turn off of to go floating or camping up the river. It's actually a nice place, and they have the greatest little dinner spot called the Hilltop. Highly recommend. But if you're not into the Hilltop, there's also another space right up the road in Kingston called the Snake Pit or Enaville Resort. If you've not been, highly recommend that one too. So the combination of Pinehurst and Kingston and all of the gulches in between areas give us kind of a service population of about 3,400 people. And then we go on to Smelterville. So Smelterville is a town to our east that's experiencing rapid growth, and it's not part of our library district. So you're probably wondering, why am I talking about Smelterville? We do have several non-resident members who pay their out-of-district fee of $25 per household to use our library. Roger back there. And so we love our little neighbor town, from their Walmart to their Dollar Tree. We get our supplies from there sometimes. And like every Silver Valley resident, I am so looking forward to us getting a Maverick gas station there. Okay, so this year we've checked out 29,355 items, which is up from last year. Last year we only checked out 25,616 items, so we're doing a little better. This year visits also went up for the year. We had, I can't do that, 24,035 members in the building this year, which is up from last year, but not quite shutdown or closure levels. So we'll work our way back up there. It's taken us a while, but we're going slowly, slow and steady. I also thought it'd be cool to see what it looked like spread out over a year, what our door counts kind of look like. We don't really have any major lulls or major hikes. And that's a little different from our neighboring libraries, or some of our neighboring libraries who complain of a lull in the summertime. And I attribute that to our strong summer reading program. Okay, so if you guys were here last year, you guys get to tune out the next 6 slides, but if you weren't, you get to pay attention. So this is the part that was by request of our former director, Sherry. And if you haven't had the pleasure of meeting Sherry, she's kind of a girl boss, so I do what she says. Anyhow, let's see. In 1974, the members of the Pinehurst Kingston PTA talked about creating a library in the school that was run by the PTA. They did some research. They decided, well, it's not for us. But some concerned citizen, I'm going to guess Sherry was among those concerned citizens, thought the idea had potential. So those concerned citizens mapped out borders, went to the Shoshone County Board of Commissioners, held a public hearing, and created the Pinehurst Kingston Free Library District. So that Pinehurst Kingston is where we get the PK in our initials that you'll sometimes see us abbreviated as. And usually people who don't know that kind of have questions. And we actually had the sign say Pinehurst Kingston until about 2012. So that was with us for a long time. So in 1976, Pinehurst Kingston opened its doors, or rather the elementary school's doors, to the public. Our library was in the cafeteria. Our shelves are still there, actually. They had to build us our own separate entrance for the public. And a really cool fact that happened between this year and last year, they built a new cafeteria onto the building, and their old cafeteria is now being used as their school library. So full circle. So in 1977, the Pinehurst Kingston Free Library District was contacted by Kootenai County Library District. That'd be you guys. You guys were like, hey, you know, Rose Lake Canyon and Cataldo, they're like way over there on the other side of the hill. Would you mind handling that for us? And so we did for $3.07 per person, in case you guys needed a reminder about inflation this morning. So in 1985, we joined the Cooperative Information Network, and I'm going to set up a joke here. It's abbreviated CIN, and we pronounce it CIN if you're not in the Community Library Network. So we stopped charging you guys for those Rose Lake Canyon and Cataldo members right about then. And then October 1st, 1996, beginning of the fiscal year of 96, we, Pinehurst Kingston Free Library District consolidated with Kootenai-Shoshone Area Libraries, forming Kootenai County Libraries, forming Kootenai-Shoshone Area Libraries, which was abbreviated KSAL, and to everybody outside the district pronounced KSAL. Oh, whoops, one, too far. So the joke that I was setting up was, whoa, I went way back too far. The joke that I was setting up is eventually we renamed to Community Library Network. And the former director was so proud of that. He was like, you guys can't abbreviate it. You can't call it something other than CLN. It has to be abbreviated that way. And everybody who worked retail just looked at that CLN and went, clean. And so the joke for everybody who isn't a member of the district is that the Community Library Network is the cleanest library living in CIN. So a little bit about the team. There's me. You can't really see me on the screen there. Then there's Anne. She's a retired pharmacy tech. She keeps current on her pharmacy tech information, and that way she's really great for reference questions, specifically medical reference questions, because she knows how to direct people with those specific tools, which is really great. Next is Kim. We got Kim from Post Falls. She moved over this way, and we kidnapped her. We were like, yes, we want an experienced librarian. Mm-hmm. So she's actually worked here, I think, longer than she's worked in Post Falls now. Next we have DJ. Whoa, nobody. You can't be done yet. So next we have DJ. DJ is a circulation specialist with adult programming responsibilities. We just hired DJ. She did her paperwork earlier this week, and she'll actually start October 2nd. So we're looking forward to that. Then we have Jamie, actually back there, but she's also on the screen up here. So depending on where you want to look, Jamie is our youth services specialist. She has a history in child development or early childhood development. So she can explain to you why maybe we play with blocks with the kids and that actually leads to reading. So she's kind of awesome that way. And it really helps having her around to explain that to some of our members. Also, we have Elena. She's a circulation specialist. She's one of our newer hires, and she's also Jamie's daughter. Next, we have the bunny. So we couldn't not talk about the bunny because he's cute. So the bunny came to us mid-December, and he was just sleeping under our holly bush, and one of our members, our young members, saw him and pointed him out. And then we kept updates on the bunny all throughout the winter, which was kind of fun. And the way we track the bunny is his little footprints across the snow, and then we'd know to look on the security cameras to see him. And then the snow melted, and we had no idea if the bunny was here or not. So what we told our members was that the bunny, like most bunnies are prone to do, went and found a friend, and they're hanging out over the summer. So our youth program, again with Jamie, she has actually been drawing a huge crowd for our youth programs, so much so that we used to have our youth programs over in the children's area with the crafts in the meeting room. We outgrew that. We now have our children's programs out here in the main area, just to accommodate all the people that come. And we put the crafts in the meeting room and the children's area kind of more spread out so that we actually don't go against fire code, which is kind of awesome. Then I want to talk about this other summer program. It was one of our better summer programs, and we had over 100 people show up, hang out outside with us. This was the one where we had, it was a whole bunch of critters, and it was really great. But yeah, 100 members. She does fabulous work. Let's see, next programs, adult programs we have with Kim and coming soon DJ. But one of the questions I was asked while I was interviewing people was, what exactly is an adult program? Like what's that? And let's see. So the answer is a lot. We ask our programmers to offer programs to adults that align with our mission of empowering discovery. That can be traditional adult programs like hosting a book club or a writer's group. And I love it when there's district-wide programs offered because we get to be part of something bigger, and also because Marie, our adult programming coordinator, pretty much does all the work for us. The programs can be educational, like when we invited the Department of Labor out to a program on resumes, or one of my favorites, we had a presenter about raising chickens, about the time you'd be picking up chickens. This presenter was so on top of it. She actually called the local feed store and was like, hey, these are some of the products I'm going to be recommending, so you might want to have them in stock because I'm going to be sending people your way, which is kind of cool that she went all out for us. The programs can also be social, and like that might look like a trivia night or a game night. And I know you can get that at bars, but you know, some people don't want to go to the bar to do a trivia night, so we give them an alternative, which is kind of nice. And we also know that having that social interaction for older adults and senior citizens is really great for their mental health. So we like to offer that. We also offer creative programs like tie-dyeing and macrame, and some programs that are outside. And my favorite was a 2-part bird watching program. The first part we hosted in the library with a presenter, and he explained a little bit about bird watching, taught people how to do that. We also had a display of applicable bird watching books available, so people could be, well, we were pushing the circulation on that. And he then, after the program, we met a week later at the trailhead, and we went for a walk and tried to implement those skills that he was teaching us.
I'm sorry, can you wrap it up so we can get out of your hair in time for you guys to open? I'm sorry, I hate to.
Okay, one more slide, if that's okay. So the building, this is Randy's part because most of the changes were his. The cedar shake has been cleaned and painted. The video spinner that we got from Rathrum is on wheels, so we can push it out of the way easy for programs. We got a drinking fountain, which is kind of cool. We got new chairs and tables, which you guys are sitting on, or some of you guys are sitting on. And the RF tower in the yard is gone. We got rhubarb in our teaching gardens. And our juvenile nonfiction section was condensed to make way for the new teen section in the children's area. And we've got a few new plants, a rubber tree, an aloe, and a massive Chinese evergreen. And any questions? All right.
Okay, well, thank you so much. That was awesome. All right, next we have the consent agenda, the minutes of the regular meeting of August 17th, July 25th, August 5th, August 10th, August 18th, and CIN Financial Statements August of 2023. Do we have any corrections?
I have one correction. Let's see. It's the Tuesday, August 8th. If I can find it in my. Okay, it's bottom of page 1. Under agenda discussions and requests. Oh, Janelle, where it says Robinson asked about security for the public budget hearing. I just want it to be a little more clear of what I was asking. And if you could change it to Robinson asked about the reason security would be needed for the public budget hearing. Do you want me to read it again? And that's all I have.
Trustee Hanley?
Just a very minor one. It's a first, July 25th. There's just a flip-flop word. The 4th line down. It says Eccles provided additional and it should be an additional. So I was told you wanted to be grammatically correct. So I caught that. Very minor. I can live with it.
Great, if there are no further corrections.
Just that typo from the agenda. So if you're going to approve the consent agenda with the changes, also make that edit from the August 5th to August 8th. And that was just a typo.
Okay, so we do that by consensus.
Changes noted or something.
Change it as requested changes.
Right,
So-
yeah, so we'll change August 5th to the August 8th on the agenda instead. All right, I would,
Motion on
yeah, I would entertain a motion to accept the consent agenda?
Yeah, I move to accept the consent agenda with the two small changes as noted. Great.
Okay, it has been moved to accept the consent agenda with the three small changes noted. All those in favor?
There, we probably don't need it, the discussion needs to be, that does not need to be.
Oh, okay.
We probably don't need it, but that is.
Okay, if there is no further discussion, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. Okay, it is unanimous and the motion is carried. The consent agenda is accepted, with the three, small changes noted. All right, so next we have the Community Library Network August 2023 financial statements. Is there any discussion or questions, changes?
I have a question. So, because I had asked about our packets and it was sent online, right? And then we have them here, but I see that fellow trustees have some colored papers and I only have white, so I'm not sure if I don't have the right.
That was given out at the last meeting. It must have been after you left.
Oh, okay, thank you. Is it in here also, or?
I would like to know if the staff has anything that they would like to highlight on the financial statements for this month.
I don't have anything to highlight other than, I think Janelle did, again, an amazing job of giving us all the descriptions and the reasons.
Yes, thank you, Janelle. That is very much appreciated. Does make everything clear. Very well. Most everything.
Yeah, or brings up more questions, because I actually do have a can I?
Yes.
I do have a question on the income statements, the ebook contribution. I believe line 24, and I put 24 and 25, but I think 24 was the one that I just wanted to hear about. I can't find it right now.
What is on CIN? Are you talking about CIN?
Well, I made my notes when I was reading it online, and now I'm trying to find it in the packet because it's not in the right, it's not the same order.
It's the CIN. It's line 24. That was the consent agenda.
Yeah, so that's been approved. Now on the Community Library Network financial statements.
So what
Can
is,
she not ask a question?
what are you saying then?
This was in the consent agenda packet, and you are asking a question about the CIN.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I'm very confused not getting the packet in the
Yeah.
mail.
Do you
And
wanna
I
ask
did,
real quick.
I
or-
read it all online, but like I said, now this packet isn't in the same order as the agenda, and I don't have the colored paper, so if it's not, I can ask later. I can ask after the meeting. That's fine. I'm sure there's it's probably an easy explanation. I just saw it and I was curious, so I'll ask after. Thank you.
But it might be something that all of us need to know, so.
If you want to
Maybe
ask
not.
it, go ahead.
Okay, well, it's the ebook contribution, and I believe the percentage, like I said, I haven't even found it yet. You said you want, but the percentage was like the percentage is 546% year to date.
We only budget for what is contractually obligated. And the reason that it is way over is because there are contributions made above the contract amount.
So in the revenues and the expenditures, it's gonna be, okay. All right, thank you. Thank you for the board's patience.
So I had a question, Chair.
Okay, go ahead.
So I'm back on the property tax. I talked to you a little bit, Janelle, before the meeting, but we're at 98.7% with 1 month to go.
Okay, what line is that?
Line 1, income property taxes. So there's kind of two questions. One is we get monthly amounts that come in. But it seems like, I went back and looked at the July statement that I hadn't noticed, and the the big second payment of the year was 1.6 million. I thought it would have been like 2.5, half or 2.4. So that, maybe you can explain why that was lower. And then is it realistic that we're gonna get to 100%? Or what's going on with this, I guess? We got 1 month to go to do the last 1.3%.
We did get more in property tax in January than we did in July, and there's no way to predict who is going to pay 100% of their taxes and who is going to split it half and half. I have received the September tax payments already, and we will not meet 100%.
How far below, like, maybe it doesn't matter, but was it like 40,000 like this month was, or August?
I don't have those numbers in front of me.
Okay.
How much did you think that it was, well, I mean, can you please ask the trustee that was just speaking, how much did he anticipate it would be? And it's at 1.6 million, the check was, what was the anticipated? What did he anticipate?
Yeah, go ahead, trustee.
So my understanding was the majority comes in 2 payments per year in January. And that's where I was talking about that sawtooth wave, where we get a big payment in January, then in January, a big payment at the end of July. And I would have thought they both would have been about 2.4 million if we get 5 million from the county. But this one was 1.6, so it was significantly lower. And I don't have access to the January one, but Janelle said it probably, or that it was higher. That's the only way we could have got up close to 100%. But when I first was looking at this, I thought we were shorted for our payment in July. So, but when you look at the percent, we're close to 100%. So I would have liked to have seen the numbers for the whole year, but I guess it doesn't matter at this point. We're just about 100%.
The financial statements are all online. They can be looked at.
If there are no further questions or,
Madam Chair, the business manager said that the taxes were a little lower for September. I'm trying to understand. I thought we only got tax payments in July and January.
Janelle, would you answer that, please?
For the current tax year, homeowners submit payments to the county, and then we get it in January and July. All the other months, the taxes that are collected are taxes that are either in arrears or were late from their January or July payment.
I would also like to say that is our financial statements are online, and that can be seen. The bulk of our payments are January and July.
Okay, if there are no further comments or questions, I would entertain a motion to accept Community Library Network August 2023 financial statements.
I move that we accept the financial statements.
Does it have to have the other information there, or is that good?
Yeah, the date.
Okay, okay, so
So I move that we accept the financial statements for August 31st, ending August 31st for CIN.
if you just want to read that line there, that would make it perfect.
Yeah, I think we
The
need
Community Library Network, August
need to-
2023
Right here,
financial statements.
this line on the.
Oh, on that.
I guess I should have said the agenda.
You can read it.
So I move that we accept the Community Library Network August 23 financial statements.
It has been moved to accept the Community Library Network August 23 financial statements. There's if there are no further Discussion on that, all those in favor of accepting the Community Library Network August 23 financial statement, say aye.
I,
Aye.
Okay, the ayes have it and the motion is carried. The Community Library Network August 23 financial statements are accepted. All right, now we will go into circulation statistics.
And that was a page added to the table, and I apologize. We were not able to get the data done before your packet.
I think it was like all the numbers are working in the right direction.
Positive. I just always like to point out circulation is higher this year for the district than last year, and people count, people coming in is higher as well. So all positive trends.
Trustee Hannah?
Madam Chair, I think we spoke about it once before. At some future date, and I know there's a lot going on now, it would be nice to see these circulation numbers in a some type of a graph. It's difficult, and maybe even a 10-year graph, because I don't know if those numbers are better or worse than last year, last month, comparing. I like to see more of a macro picture of where we're going. Is circulation overall higher or lower? And actually from some of these other categories in there. So I think that would help me anyway. I'm not asking as a tasker right now, but I'm just saying for my purposes, it might say 1 million and I say, well, that's nice. I guess that's higher or lower. I don't know. So I think that would be helpful, I think, in the long term, but I'm not asking for tasking at the moment.
Trustee Robinson?
I do believe that it shows, I mean, I know that it shows last year's compared to like right now. So there is that. Did you see that? It's just, I know you mentioned this before that you prefer a pie chart or something like that, but it does show last year compared to right now, but not 10 years ago.
It's difficult to see numbers in a table form as compared to a pictorial. And I don't think I was the one, it may have been another trustee there, Mr. Plus, that brought it up another meeting months ago. But I think, yes, I can compare 1 year, but how does that compare to the COVID year? What about the pre-COVID years? And so it'd be interesting to see, is circulation going up or down? What's the long-term bigger annual trend? So that's all.
And how difficult would that be to incorporate, like on the back side of the page? Janelle, or
A 10-year plan, or a year, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years. All of that information is recorded on our Commission for Libraries. All of our data is public, so I can pull it from what we've published and put that together. But it's again, the priority. We doing it monthly versus maybe doing it once a year. We will be finishing up our fiscal year, and then we will be doing our annual report. So while I'm looking at all those numbers, that might be a good time in a couple of months if that's appropriate.
All right, I'm not in any hurry for it, but I would like to see something, and minimally, I would say 5 years. Ideally, if the data is readily available, I'd like to see a little longer, going back farther, but again, I don't consider this a high priority given where we have a lot of different things going on, I think, right now. I'll leave that to the chair, other people.
And maybe just to clarify, circulation, door count are all numbers that are reported monthly.
I need to study this table more carefully, and see what would help me, but I don't know yet. I just got this before the meeting, but I'm not complaining. So I'm not asking for anything now, but I think that at a future date somewhere, it could be months from now, when things are slowed down, if that ever happens, that it would be nice to see this in a fashion where we can see where is the library going, maybe even see the different libraries too. Is circulation is going up or down at the different libraries, and where are we as a whole as a CLN? So I'm not requesting anything specific right now. I'm just saying I think down the road in the long term, it would be helpful, whether it's done annually or a monthly basis. I'm not really sure yet. I haven't thought it out, but I think that again, it's difficult to sit here and look at, I'll just make believe, I don't know, 40 line items and about 10 columns across and make some sense of the whole thing. I mean, it's not that easy.
One of the things that I would like to say is that, circulation, I know is a true number. All of those things. Door count has been consistently challenging for us, so we need to note that it's not we've had times when door counters haven't worked. We've had times when we've had better door counting, so I would say that if we have a door count, we need to understand that that's very volatile.
And to that point, I was going to mention a little bit later under director's presentation, but we are going to be installing new door counters at all of our locations. And so Post Falls already has one in place, the sort of more modern technology, and Hayden will be next. And then we've already purchased them and working with the electrical team to install them. So I'm expecting in the next month or two to have them all with a much more accurate door count.
Awesome.
Sure.
Yes,
So I've got a couple of questions for clarification. So we got materials added year to date last year, but we have a weeding policy. Is there, can we add how many things have been removed and then maybe the total number of items? I mean, it's nice to look at how many new things were added, but I know we're also removing. And then kind of the same thing on patrons. We add people with cards, but what I understood when I got my card, mine had expired at some point. So apparently after 2 years, they drop you if you haven't been used, or can we get a count of how many people have been, or how many patrons have been dropped? And then get a total, we got total current card holders, but total of last year to compare total of what we have now with what we had last year. And then my third thing or fourth thing is, I think I've asked it before, but internet use, how is that counted? Is that number of connections to the Wi-Fi? Or is that number of pages, web pages accessed or something?
Answer that, please.
Yeah, we have two metrics. So it is both Wi-Fi and then individual logins. We have software that manages it. So it's per unit that we log in as well as per Wi-Fi login. But it will be some cases Wi-Fi, like phone login, may not count.
And that isn't staff, is it? Does staff get counted in that?
There's a separate Wi-Fi for staff in all of our locations, so staff is not included.
So that number listed there is conglomerate of hard connections and Wi-Fi and so forth.
All right, so I think our time is up for this section, and this is not an action item. So we will now go into the director's report.
I'm going to spend most of my time talking about the board calendar, which is in your packet as a draft. I was going to mention the installation of the people counter, so we got to that one early, but I'm excited about that. So we're expecting some higher accuracy with better technology. And I'll keep you posted on that. We were able to sign just this week the roof contract. At the urging of Mr. Boyles, we added some clauses for additional liability coverage and work coverage or insurance. And so that's been done. And so it's been signed. And then just a comment that I have not received anything back from Harrison for our research or study on the soil and things like that. And then I wanted to, if possible, move on to the board calendar. This is something that traditionally the board reviews every September for the next year. That's this document in your packet. And so this has primarily across the top, the reports from staff that you will receive in each month. So maybe review that if there are any reports that are missing or that you would like to see. It does have the estimated hearing in January, the hearing in August for budget, some information on budget on there, the annual meeting, and then usually there's a special meeting for the director's yearly evaluation. And so the other things that are not on here that are typically scheduled by the board are facility planning. So question for the board if they want to add facility planning. Any policies that the board would want to review. This is a way to sort of put them on the calendar, and instead of reviewing multiple policies all at the same time, kind of one or two at a time and putting it out in an organized fashion. So just the start of the discussion, this was your draft.
I would love to see us put on the beginnings of talking about facility planning. And it looks like, December or February would be a good time to do that. February? You're shaking your head to February. When I think about December, I'm thinking like, oh, December, but.
We do have or tentatively have the facilities managers report in November. And so any of those months would be a good consideration. So after you hear some of the items brought up, then anytime after that, I think would be appropriate.
So December would be a good time.
I think December would be a
good discussion.
A good discussion. Okay. I would anticipate it taking several months. We have 7 locations plus fleet.
Okay, so do we tentatively add that now, or are we just pre-discussing what? I'm fine with December for the facilities.
Okay.
How does the rest of the board feel about it?
Yeah, if it's consensus, I think that's okay. This is your calendar and you can change it, so.
When you talk about facility management, are we talking about just us getting a report from Randy, or we've talked in the past of hiring a company that actually looks into what buildings need long-term? So are we looking at that for facility management, or just us as a board trying to piecemeal together what we think is upcoming?
Go ahead, Trustee Blank.
We get a facilities, thanks. We get a facilities report in November. If we have a discussion in December, I would really like to include the possibility of having a facilities, what do we call it? Facilities.
Like master plan?
Master plan, just a discussion of the facilities, having an outside company looking at our facilities, which we have talked about that for years. And it would be absolutely timely to begin to do that. But that's part of the discussion.
Okay, that makes sense.
Trustee Claus?
Personally, I would like to hear the facilities report on November and then decide what we're going to do after we hear that. Right now, I'm not aware of very many things that need to be done, but let's set some time aside once we hear what the issues are and pick the December anyway, I'd rather wait.
Trustee Handler?
I would tend to agree. I would like to hear just a report. I don't know if that's a report on each building, what that is. And before we lock ourselves into saying we're going to do a certain thing in December, I don't know if we've had adequate time yet to decide what are the big issues aside from facilities that we may want to pursue. So I prefer not to box ourselves into a commitment on facilities that's disproportionate time-wise that may detract us from where we want to go with regard to other matters. So I don't have any other secret plan in mind, but I would like to know, generally speaking, where are we facilities-wise? If that's just a generic report on each of the different sites, and then It'd be interesting to find out there's a big problem somewhere, and if not, that's fine. And then later on, look at, but I agree with with Michelle's, idea that I think I did see that somewhere on the website that, there is supposed to eventually be some type of master plan, I think, just so we know, because these are potentially large expense things. So if we're gonna build a new wall or replace a roof or do some major recarpeting, I'm sure some of these things are big ticket items, and there's some things that got an HVAC system, so forth. So, I'd rather not box ourselves into saying we're going to beyond getting a report in in November.
December would seem like a timely time to do that, right after the report, to start that discussion. But could we take it off? We can take it off.
You can, if I could. So, just to be clear, typically, when we budget, we review projects for facilities, and we didn't really do that this year, where we set aside CARF or capital improvement type of funds. And so we would be at this meeting getting kind of a summary of the condition of our facilities, some issues that we've identified to bring to the board's attention. But facility planning is more than just putting the new roof on or patching this or doing that. Like you heard here, we replace some shingles, things like that. It's additionally reviewing the data of where growth is in our community, and it is doing some future planning, and noticing changes in demographics, noticing changes in use patterns, and all of that. So it's a much more complicated or complex conversation than just 25 minutes at one meeting, one time. I would expect to see facility planning on the board's sort of calendar for 3 or 4 months for us to review all the information that we need to.
Recently, we've had things put on the agenda that look like they're completed agenda items, that they already have a resolution to them. I am not asking for that. I am asking that we start facilities discussion for a discussion, and for us not to look at the bigger picture and not to begin to start looking at the bigger picture early in the year. I think would lead us into, I think I would just like to say yes to what our director just said. This is simply a beginning discussion of a much bigger picture than just repairs that we might need to do. It is a picture of where our facilities are, and it allows us to look at, and I would assume that we would be receiving some data on usage of our buildings, and the director's shaking her head, so that we can begin to not make emergency decisions. We can talk about it. To not look at that as soon as possible feels like we're shoving it into an emergency situation.
If I could just add to some clarification. So staff, the director, the facility manager, the administrative team really do the operational repairs and maintenance to our facilities. The discussion for the board is at a higher level, and it's really planning the funds. It's really planning the growth or the needs of the facilities and vehicles for not just 1 year, but multiple years. So I just want to make sure the board understands, because we have some newer members, that it's a higher level discussion than yes, we're getting tires, or no, we're not getting tires. Those types of decisions are made by staff, and that this is a higher level board level decision and discussion.
Okay, question, is the calendar the only part of the director's report? I know we're focused on this calendar. Was there a bigger report, or is this it?
I was just including those facility things. So the people counter, the roof, and Harrison, I thought the facility stuff was most of interest. I can report, because I know there was a comment that the library has issued 98 minor cards so far.
Right.
So could we pencil it in for December to start the discussion on that? It can be taken off, obviously, but I think after November hearing the report, December definitely, as Chair said, is a good time to at least start a discussion. And I would like to have it actually put on our calendar.
I would support that. Okay, and I support that also. So it sounds like we have a consensus on that. Was there any policies that anyone wanted to put on the calendar? This is staff.
We have a policy on public records and retention. I'd recommend reviewing that with legal counsel.
When that? Amber?
Or January, maybe.
And could you repeat what that is?
We have a policy on public records and retention schedule. I'd like to review that. It's several years since we've updated it.
Is that on this calendar?
I think she's suggesting it.
Oh,
Let me just ask a hopefully quick question about that.
Okay, go ahead, Trustee.
Thank you. The public records retention, isn't that kind of like a state or even federal law of how long you have to keep particular documents? So how is that a policy of that we have? And I don't know if either one of you could answer that for me. That please answer.
Yes, so there's some statutes, especially in Idaho for retention. I'm going to kind of categorize them. They mainly are temporary files, more permanent files. So the statutes do outline the requirements. I was going to get you the date for ours. Our retention of records policy was last updated in 2012. And so that's why it's high up my list. If there's been any changes, we have not been.
I got you.
Other policies that were on here that have, most are fairly current, which is great. The use of alcohol at district programs is from 2015. The personnel manual is from 2020. The member confidentiality policy is from 2016. The gathering of public signatures is 2018. So I would recommend we start tackling some. And again, I'm happy to do the research and review and draft a policy. And then, send that to legal counsel for review before it's brought to the board for consideration and changes. But I would prefer maybe just one policy a month.
Mr. Hanley?
Yeah, I would like, I don't know what the name of the policy was, but I would like to revisit the minors card policy at some future date here. I would say hopefully in the next couple of months. Sure.
Yes, Mr.
and
Moss.
I'm not willing to give the director a blanket approval to just rewrite policies and send them to council. I would like us to be involved in these policy.
Well, typically,
Go ahead, sorry.
okay, so technically, according to Robert's rules, you're not supposed to try to reserve space until a person is yielded before. Okay, so who wants to speak next?
Are you done?
I wasn't actually done. I would just say that the board's one of its main tasks is to write policies. And just because in the past we've done it and had the director do it and then present it to us, I don't agree with that. The statutes make it clear it's our job. She needs to have input, but I'm not saying for her to write them.
Nick, go ahead, Director.
Yes, I would just point out that under my principal duties, it does have planning and policy making. And in the first bullet does say recommends library policy, services, and fiscal activities to the board. And again, so responsible for developing strategic plans and facility plans with the board, And so again, typically that is how it's done, where there's a review of several policies. There's either brought to the board for feedback and then sent to legal, or in this case, because it is so based in statute, I would recommend that it be worked on, drafted by the director, who doesn't make as much money as the attorney, then sent to the attorney for their review for legal compliance, and then brought back for initial discussion for the board. And again, this is specifically on the policy that's on public retention. I would also point out that I am the custodian of public records for the institution, so it makes a lot of sense that in this case, this particular policy starts with me.
Trustee Blank?
We have never developed a policy. We've never, as far as I know, unless, but policies are typically developed worked on by the director with the help of the board, and then sent to legal counsel. It isn't that the director has never, run out and made a policy, send it to legal counsel, and then that's not, it's always been brought back to. However, I would like to point out that the person with the most experience in public libraries, the person who has worked most with policy for public libraries, the person who has the most in-depth information on the Idaho law is our director, and that is why we have hired a director. And so circumventing the director is expensive for us. Using the director for what she has brought to the table would be valuable for us. Let's remember that she is actually the expert here on public libraries.
Trustee Robinson?
Thanks. On the same vein, the director working on a policy doesn't just come up with it out of her own head, like, what do I want on there? She's going to be like researching codes that have changed since the 2012 or 2020 that have to be put in our policies to be legal with state and federal. So it's not, I'm assuming it's not director just sitting down and coming up with ideas out of her head. She's researching to find out what has to be in there. And then we do as a board review it, and we can also do our own research. And if we disagree with her interpretation of what she put in the policy, that's when we speak up and vote to change what she had put in. But it's one from 2012, all public records retention. I'm sure things have changed. And you don't want to be on the wrong side of that if there was ever some sort of lawsuit. You don't have the right records for the right amount of time.
Okay, and I was of the same opinion, but it can save a lot of time to have the director do it, and we can make any changes that we want. Okay, so we're running out of time. Well, actually, we're out of time for this section, but if you have a quick comment, Mr.
Real
Hanley?
quick one, maybe the library director can make recommended changes. They go to the board can hash them out before we send them to legal counsel.
Yeah, I think that's typically what we do.
That's not, I don't think that's what the director said. I think she said she would write them up, they would go to legal counsel, and then be presented to the board. I think that's what I heard, I'm not sure.
Sure.
Go ahead, Director.
In this case, I'd like to just get clarification from legal counsel ahead of time before. This is very based in statute in this particular topic. So, but I'm happy to bring it to the board. It's just that I may be bringing something that is not compliant.
Mr. Moss?
All I'm saying or asking is that case by case, policy by policy, we authorize the director to start with it. I am completely opposed to a blanket statement that all policies start with the director.
I don't think,
Trustee Blank?
I don't think that statement was made. But I wanted to be clear that it's the public records and retention policy that you are suggesting that you work with the attorney beforehand because it is so based in statute. And that seems very reasonable. And I would like to see the beginning of those policies. I'd like to see that put on January so that we can begin to look at that.
Okay, so our time is past due for this section. So since all of our discussions are short today, I move to suspend the rules so that each person is limited to speak for no more than 2 minutes, each speech, for all discussions, all discussion portions this meeting. So it's not a debatable motion. So all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Aye. Okay, so the ayes have it, and the rules are suspended so that each person is limited to speak for no more than 2 minutes each turn for all discussions. All right, so the next section, or let's see, so yeah, our next section is the CLN closure on Sundays no longer being considered, and that is an action item. I would like to move that if the CLN Board of Trustees did in fact have a valid approval vote of closing on Sundays, it is now rescinded. The CLN is not closing all the branches on Sundays. And I can read that again slower.
Please do.
Yes. All right. So I move that if the CLN Board of Trustees did in fact have a valid approval vote closing on Sundays, it is now rescinded. CLN is not closing all the branches on Sundays. Discussion? Yeah, Trustee Mike.
I
think you would need did we get a second?
No,
Not on small boards.
Okay.
So I've had a very busy week. And so I just saw this. When was this item added to the agenda? When was it amended? Do you remember? When was it? When were we notified of it?
Tuesday.
Was it Tuesday?
I believe it was Tuesday between 8 and 9 a.m.
Okay. I had received no information on it, nothing. I mean, I have no idea where this came from or what brought it about.
Okay.
So I'm concerned that so many things are changed on our agenda so quickly to the meeting so that there cannot be information discovered about it. So maybe I can receive some of that now.
Okay, we have been discussing this, that we were going to put this on a future agenda.
I don't remember that.
I still have the floor.
Okay.
We discussed it at our last regular meeting, I believe, or last meeting. Anyway, so it's on there and the director has suggested it, and yeah, so
Can I,
Mr. Hanley,
I just need,
Mr. Hanley was next.
I have the email where we got the amended agenda, and that came out on Tuesday at 8:26 a.m.
and was there discussion on this, somehow or other this was, is it part of our last minutes? Was it discussed at our last meeting that we would put this on? I just was curious, because there's so many things that are added to the agenda that are don't feel like there's a lot of background information on.
Okay, well, right now,
ask her,
the motion is that if the CLN bot did in fact have a valid approval vote of closing on Sundays, it is now rescinded. CLN is not closing all the branches on Sundays. So we should actually be discussing.
That's what I'm discussing. I'm discussing how that came about.
Sure.
Mr. Blas.
So we had several meetings where we ventured into this and we started to discuss it. We tried to go into executive session, and at some point in there, we made a motion. I think it was actually the motion and was seconded on an amendment to it. And then we finished that. And before we did the actual motion or voted on it, we tabled it. It's looking back at videos, it's a little bit confusing, but all we're doing is just ending it. If there was a motion made that was tabled, we're ending it, and I totally support this. Just put this behind us.
Mr. Hanley?
I believe it was tabled, with a suggestion of council. That's when we tabled it, to my recollection from this forum.
All right, and yeah, I just want to say that the budgetary issues no longer support the closures. Do we have any further discussion? Okay, it has been moved that if the CLN bot did in fact have a valid approval vote of closing on Sundays, it is now rescinded. CLN is not closing all the branches on Sundays. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, it is unanimous. The ayes have it. And if the CLN bot did in fact have a valid approval vote of closing on Sundays, it is now rescinded. CLN is not closing all the branches on Sundays. All right, and now we have our legal counsel report. Mr. Boyles.
Thank you, Chair Audison. We received several letters from nonprofit NGOs related to the Sunday closure action item, and also a letter from Ms. McCree. And what I would propose now that the board has resolved the issues is that the board directs me to issue a follow-up in the form of a written correspondence to each organization, and also to authorize me to reach out to Mrs. McCree or her attorney, because she wrote a letter. I'm not sure if it's on her behalf or her client, and discuss and attempt to resolve any of those concerns if any of those are outstanding. Other than that, I think the director and the board have been doing a good job and we're getting through business. And so I don't have any other outstanding matters other than a couple of public records requests and maybe a contract or two. So
Okay, I would like to so direct the council. I need to say the whole thing that he said, or just I'm in agreement with directing him to do as he proposed.
It's not an action item, so I would recommend just consensus.
Okay. All right, is there any discussion?
And I would agree with that, Chair, that I'd been previously authorized to respond. However, since the board seemed to change its direction, it seemed wise to me to wait to make sure we had reached a resolution before written correspondence was issued. So
My recollection was that at that meeting that council was going to provide a memo. And so I did not recall correspondence. So just clarification. I don't know, is there a memo coming, or if this is in place of a memo and this is just for clarification?
I think this is in place of a memo. Unless the board would like that, we held off providing a written draft to not incur the expense. We can provide it, but I would recommend that it's not needed this time. Just a short letter response.
My only concern is that if this comes up again as a discussion for next year, it would be nice to have that documented. And I know there has been some invoicing for that. So I don't know how much more it would be to just put it in a piece of paper, but I would prefer just a document. So if it ever needs to be brought back.
I'm okay either way.
Mrs. Blake?
I was looking forward to the memo, and so I would like the memo in addition to a letter, to receiving copies of the letter. Yes, I do think these people need to be responded to. Is it important that the attorney respond to it, or could our director respond? Would that be, we received the memo from the, I don't know. And whatever is the most appropriate, but the attorney's fees are concerning me. But whatever is appropriate, I don't know.
Sure.
Somebody needs to write them.
Mr. Fox?
I'm in favor of doing what the legal counsel recommended, just writing a short letter to each of these people and just ending it there. I don't think we need to write a memo and try to summarize everything.
Mrs. Robinson?
Wasn't the memo having to do with the problems with potentially why Sunday closures were gonna happen in the first place? Isn't that what the memo was?
Mhm.
Then I definitely support having that memo written, for future and to, sew up the whole last few months of people going back and forth saying, it was for that, it wasn't for that. I think having the memo would be important for the library system to have on record, that we actually followed through on these discussions, because it is definitely recorded with, you know, certain people saying certain things about why Sunday should be closed, whether it was meant that way or not. It has been recorded, it's out there. So I think the memo would be very important to tidy this up, put the little bow on it. So I'm in support of the memo, especially if it's already been partially or almost all the way done, to be submitted to the board.
Mr. Fox or Mr. Hanley? Sorry.
I would tend to agree with trustee Blank's suggestion to keep our legal costs down. I don't see any need for a memo. We know what our decision is. And we can have copies of the letters that go out to the two entities that that were interested in the issue. I don't see a necessity for the time. I think that the discussion and the whole issue is fairly closed, in my opinion. So I don't see a need for a memo. I don't want to belabor it. If anyone wants it one desperately, it's up to the board here, but I don't see any for it.
Okay, so just to clarify, you don't want to do the memo. You're in agreement with
The letter.
Mr. Boyle's
Yeah.
recommended? Okay, and I'm also in favor of taking the council's counsel. So that is a consensus, yes? Mr. Robinson?
So it is a consensus, because I was gonna ask council, because the memo was asked to be written months ago or a month ago, a long time ago. So how,
A month ago.
a month ago? So how far have you gotten on said memo? And how much more work would it take to actually just print it out and give it to us?
I'd have to go back and take a look at the file. As soon as I recognized that the board was having issues and changing a direction, we stopped work on that to not incur further fees. And so I can follow up with you and give you an estimate, a specific one if you like. I don't have a number or a figure immediately available.
I don't want you to incur more costs for the CLN just to look into it for me. I just feel like it probably should have been done already and submitted. And I think it is important for it to be documented that we received it.
Okay, so did you mention the memo? Do we now have consensus?
We have consensus. I don't want the memo. I do want the letters written to the response to the 3 letters that were written to us.
Okay, all
How
right,
can it be noted?
trustee or Mrs. Blank.
How come everybody else gets to be called trustee?
Because I'm switching back and forth. It feels more comfortable to say Mr. or Mrs., but I've sort of developed the habit of trustee, so.
I don't care. I just don't want to be
Trustee.
singled out to be not called a trustee.
Okay, sorry, trustee Blank.
I just would like it noted that 2 board members very much want this memo for further documentation, and that has been also a request by the director. And so why we would not want to be very careful, legally careful and have it well documented, I don't know.
Trustee Robinson.
So I don't know if we're done with that particular discussion. I think so, because you said consensus not to. Right?
Yeah, if everyone else is done discussing it, then we would be going on our tour and break.
Well, I have another concern about the billing style. So I guess this is where I would bring it up. Legal counsel, do you have left?
6 minutes, 32 seconds.
Okay, and this won't take long. I actually have the bills or the invoices from, our last attorney, Katie Burrington and, Clay Stevens, or Stevens Clay. I would like to ask that, and I do appreciate that, Colton Boyles now does line item his, invoices. But I would like him to also, or the agency to also, say what trustee asked for this information and or the director asked for it. That's what Stevens Clay did. That's what Lake City Law did. I think it would be important for a couple reasons. One might be if a particular trustee is using Boyle's Law more than maybe they think, they might actually look at it and be like, oh, I need to like maybe do a little more research on my own or cut the phone call shorter. I think it would be important for everybody to see who was incurring these costs because the costs are definitely going up. Okay, so I just asked that in the line items, it mentions, just like our other attorneys did, who that person, who the phone call was with, or who the work was done for.
Okay, I'm not sure if I was supposed to interrupt you, but actually the legal counsel, this discussion was about the response to recent letters. And I kind of assumed that was already resolved because, I think he's been paid. So,
well, I thought comments and discussions were, that's a different line. So this is my comment and I'd like discussion on it.
I have another comment as well, because our attorney's here. I thought that was it as well. It's not clear on the agenda. So could we not take a few minutes and make some comments as it said?
but I think we're supposed to.
I don't think, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Hanley, or Trustee Hanley.
I don't think, legal counsel billing is on the agenda.
Comments and discussion under legal counsel report is, and where do I need to have this added ask to have this request added onto the agenda?
I think that probably would be best because my understanding was that the comments and discussion were in a response to recent letters. So I kind of assumed that was the topic for this area.
So where do is it on the agenda?
When we get to the
Discussion of
yeah.
future, okay, thank you.
Okay. All right, and so if there are no further comments about the response to recent letters, we will move on to the break and tour. And that break will be for 10 minutes, including the tour. Well, we have like over 15 minutes.
Not that long to drive.
All right, it is 10:39 and this meeting will come back to order after the break. First up, we have trustee continuing education on Robert's rules. Can someone turn off their extra thing, because that's what makes it buzz when many people have their mics on. Okay, well, usually that's what makes it buzz, perhaps not this time. All right, so I've been looking into Robert's rules and trying to help our board function better. So I passed something out and we will go over that. That it is perfectly fine that the previous chair and board established their own customs that worked for them. However, the present chair and board can still follow Idaho statutes, ICFL, which is the Idaho Commission for Libraries, guidance, bylaws, and Robert's rules. The following issues keep coming up, so I have answered them here. The precedence of rules. So laws supersede bylaws. That means that if there's a conflict, the statutes or laws are higher. Bylaws supersede rules of order. Rules of order supersede standing rules, which supersede custom. And that's all found on page 84 in Robert's Rules in Brief. Quote, no matter how long established a custom is, however, it can never conflict with a written rule. And if the conflict is pointed out, the written rule must be followed. That's on Robert's Rules in Brief, page 87. Next thing is the agenda, voting and making motions are all within the standard purview of the chair. Idaho Commission for Libraries Trustee Manual, page 67 says, quote, chair plans the meeting carefully. When, where, what, why, who. He or she solicits input from the library's director to prepare a timed agenda in advance. The chair should be aware that all library trustees, including the board chair, may make and vote on motions. Being the chair does not reduce or alter a trustee's powers or duties, end quote. Our bylaws, Article 3, Section 6, specify that, quote, the chairman may make a motion. Robert's Rules 41.7, quote, the secretary can prepare or assist the presiding officer, the chair, to prepare such a memorandum, i.e. the agenda. And the majority vote is used for all actions before the board, except as otherwise provided by statute, such as executive sessions. Our bylaws specify that, quote, proceedings of all meetings shall be governed by Robert's Rules of Order for small boards. And that's found in Article 3, Section 6. But the bylaws later state, quote, an affirmative vote of the majority of all the members of the board present at the time shall be necessary to approve any action before the board. That's Article 6, Section 1. Limiting debate time can be beneficial, as in, quote, the right of the group to not be unduly delayed in conducting its business. That's on page 34 of Robert's Rules in Brief. And ensuring that everyone gets a turn when discussion time is limited. The notice of a meeting is defined in statute 74-2042 as, quote, meeting date, time, place, and name of the public agency calling for the meeting, end quote. Posting the agenda is clearly a separate issue than posting the notice. Quote, a trustee acts to ensure the best interests of the library and the community it serves. That's found in our trustee manual, page 15. It seems reasonable that this includes debating civilly and trying to function well as a board. I think that all of us can work on that and help be a better board. Decorum is behavior in keeping with good taste and propriety to, quote, assist the carrying on of debate in a smooth and orderly manner. That's Robert's Rules 43:19. I know it can be difficult to behave with decorum, and I have not always been perfect at it, especially when I was a new trustee. Anyway, it can be difficult to behave with decorum when debating a topic one is passionate about or accepting an outcome we don't agree with, but we need to give it our best efforts to refrain from being a dysfunctional board. Robert's Rules of Order is to help the deliberative assembly so that all can be heard and influence each other in an orderly manner, and the will of the majority of the board prevails in an efficient manner. That's Chapter 1, Robert's Rules in Brief. The last point was debate issues, not personalities. When a motion is pending, you may attack the idea or likely results of the, this whole thing is a quote, debate issues, not personalities. When a motion is pending, you may attack the idea or likely results of the proposal in strong terms, but you must avoid personalities. If you disagree with someone else's statement, you might say, I believe there is strong evidence that the member is mistaken. That's Robert's Rules in Brief, page 31. So if there is a question or problem with anything that I've quoted, I cited the references so you can see for yourself. If desired, you may take it up with the ICFL, the legislature, the Robert's Rules Association, or try to change the bylaws. But I'm hoping not to drain any more board time on these issues. Yes, Trustee Blank.
I have comments. Is that who wrote this?
I did, and I did quite a bit of research and tried as much as possible to direct quotes from these sources.
Did you check with either our attorney or I have some real concerns about some of these, and I understand that we may not have time to discuss them, but I have some serious concerns with them. Did you check with our attorney and or did you check with our director whether presenting these ideas this way? Did you check with anybody else?
I did not check with the attorney. I discussed with the director that I wanted to do this, and she said it was fine. She didn't tell me that I should.
Okay, so but you didn't discuss this paperwork, whether or not it was okay.
No,
I
it's
was-
just
Okay,
the general idea.
so this just came from you and these quotes. I see the quotes. I just needed to know the sources of who wrote this because of my profound concerns. Since we are, time is limited, I would like to be able to get clarity on this at another meeting. And so when agenda time comes around, I will ask to have it put on the agenda. I appreciate very much that you put this all down for us.
Okay, thank you. Yes, that sounds great. All right, so we will be moving on to the engagement of auditor for fiscal year 2023. Director has things to say, I'm sure.
This is included in your packet. It's the document that looks like this. It says Anderson Brothers CPA. So every year, for every fiscal year, we contract with an auditor. And so it is signed by management as well as the chair typically. And so this is the proposal or the engagement letter for fiscal year 2023. I did send out, and not included in the packet is the full scope of work. It's longer. And that was in an email. But this is what we need to take action on today.
How long have we used this? Oh, excuse me, I didn't raise my hand. How long have we used Anderson Brothers CPA?
I've used the auditor, Tony, for 20 plus years, but she's worked for multiple companies during that time.
So she's intimately aware of how, so you think, so, okay.
So we receive a significant savings because of her pre-existing knowledge for us. She has knowledge of all of our facilities as well as Community Information Network, CIN, which is included in this as well.
Have we ever had a problem with her
No.
in any way, shape, or form? So then my other question is, she's a specialized government auditor, is that right? I remember when we were looking for government auditors, and they are far and we are required to have a specialized government audit. Is that correct? And that is not a popular. That's not a popular profession. Okay. I just wanted to make sure. I mean, we haven't had any reason to be anything but find her completely adequate. She's very timely. She always gives us a report. She's been good.
And Director, do you have any further response on that?
No, it's absolutely correct. Everything that Katie said about, or Trustee Blank said about, it is difficult. There's essentially a shortage of CPAs in the region, and to have this sort of additional governmental accounting background and qualifications, it would be very difficult to find a replacement at this short time or short notice. And she's provided outstanding work for us.
I haven't had any complaints.
Sure. So I think we got two items. One was a letter with just a background information about the firm and employees and so forth. So that one didn't really have any information about the cost. Yeah, so that's this one.
Scope of work and engagement letter are the two things we received.
And the vote
I don't see
today,
the scope of work, I guess.
Right here.
it was emailed to everybody.
That is what you have right in front of you on your book. Scope of work. Doesn't it say proposal for
It
financial?
doesn't say scope of work. What,
But it does say proposal for financial.
yeah, but what it is a letter, August 31st. And then it's the firm profile, audit approach, our team. Is that the one that you're saying is scope of work?
Mhm.
That I don't think is scope of work, but that's more of a request to do it. So it looks to me like this one, the audit engagement letter is a contract that actually says what they will do and what the fees are. It just seemed, maybe legal counsel can look at it, but I don't know if it's really a contract.
It's the one we've always used, isn't it?
It's the one we've always used. It has been reviewed in the past by legal counsel. It is an engagement letter, so it is contractually binding, I guess, if you want to say it that way. It is an agreement. It's what's on the agenda for action by the board today.
Okay, and this was sent to our current council?
It has not been sent to the current council.
I would just be looking for more of a contract, but if this is sufficient, I'm fine with it.
This is what we've used for 5 or 6 years, however it's been since.
Do I make a
Yes, or Trustee Hanley.
I'd like to make a motion if that's necessary, since this is an action item. I would move that the board concurs or approves of using Anderson Brothers CPA to perform an audit for the fiscal year 2023.
Okay, 2020. Okay, actually, I'm sorry, I forgot to write that down while you were saying it. Can you say it again?
I don't know if I remember it. I move that the board approves engaging Anderson Brothers CPA to perform a CLN audit for the fiscal year 2023.
Okay, so correct me if I'm wrong. It has been moved that the board approves engaging Anderson Brothers CPA for audit fiscal year 2023. Okay, any discussion on that? Okay, it has been moved that the board approves engaging Anderson Brothers CPA for audit fiscal year 2023. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, it is unanimous, and the board approves engaging Anderson Brothers CPA for the audit fiscal year 2023. All right, and so next we will move to the discussion of the ICRIMP appeal letter. Trustee Hanley.
Yes, I saw some confidential letters that were sent to the board members regarding the ICRIMP appeal. And so I would like to make a motion and move that the board direct the director to work with our legal counsel and to file an appeal with ICRIMP before ICRIMP's deadline. I can repeat that if you need me to.
Yes, I will. Okay, so I've got move board.
I move that the board direct the library director to work with our legal counsel.
Okay, hold on. Legal counsel.
To file an appeal.
Appeal.
With ICRIMP. Prior to the deadline.
Okay, it has been moved that the board direct the library director to work with our legal counsel to file an appeal with ICRIMP prior to the deadline. Correct?
Yes.
Okay. Discussion, Trustee Robinson.
Okay, that's nice that motion's on the table. I like that, or on the floor. So did all the trustees read the information that was sent out? The letter drafted to ICRIMP and the other ICRIMP appeal concerns to address? Did all trustees read both of those?
Yes, and so anything or discussion right now needs to be germane
Right.
to the motion.
Well, and that is.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. No, because that's basically what I wanted to know. Because that motion has to do, people need to know what's in these papers before they vote on that motion. Very germane.
Sure.
Trustee Claus.
So I read that and I find there's a lot of tentacles going out into a lot of directions, and I think it's going to be seems to me like it would be a very long discussion that probably should be in executive session. We haven't been successful in getting to executive session. I think this is a wise thing, just the director just to work directly with legal counsel at this point. We've got a limited time to ask them to requote the parts that they dropped. Let's just get on it and see if we can do that and work directly with legal counsel, please.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with that. Trustee Blank.
Is our board members expecting that this letter would be completely changed or something like that? There's a lot of, this particular draft suggests a lot of commitment. The particular draft of the letter suggests a lot of commitment of training for board members, and our board members willing to participate in that kind of training, which I think would be invaluable because we have a pretty new board. None of this training would be something that we shouldn't have done already in all actuality. In addition to that, stating clearly where the board may have transgressed and accepting responsibility for those transgressions is another thing that I think ICRIMP will be expecting. And that is also been laid out. And so I think that working with legal counsel is fine, but I think that those two things are going to be, I think that the letter, I think the way it's been presented is pretty incredible because it does those two things. We look at what we've done wrong. We show that we're aware of it, or what we possibly have done wrong. We show that we're aware of it. We show good faith in trying to correct our actions. Is that the direction that we are headed? I'm ecstatic if that's the direction we're headed. I think that's great.
Okay, Trustee Claus.
It's not the direction I intend to head. I just want something simple from legal counsel with the library director working together to do something simple that is just a request. This is way too involved at this point, and we don't have time to go through all of that. And plus, we can't get into executive session, so I don't think any of those things should be brought up.
The director.
So it was actually going to be my recommendation as well to, at this point with this draft, talk to legal counsel about it to see if there are any other legal requirements that may need to be included or to give feedback. I will say that the direction or the motion is unclear to me in terms of who is going to be voting on this. Is this going to be public vote that the letter is approved? Is it's going to be signed by the chair? Things like that. What is the follow-up or the date of follow-up? I do believe an executive session may be appropriate to discuss some of these issues. Some of them relate to personnel issues and other items like that. We do have a limited amount of time since the policy renews on October 1st. I did want to point out for the discussion that I sent an email. I did talk to Director Osborne, the executive director of ICRIMP, and he did remind that the first policy payment is due October 15th. So I want to make sure that the board understands that would be an obligation as well. Does that make sense for the appeal process? But at this point, I guess my main point is that it's unclear what we're supposed to do after we meet. And the joint powers agreement, just to remind the board, since we talked about it last week, it does specify that your appeal needs to be specific. I think the board also would need to start planning who would be the spokesperson for the oral hearing, which is in a public meeting in front of the ICRIM board. So some of those specifics, I think, also need to be considered.
Okay, so we could amend the motion, add at the end, to bring back to the board.
I would recommend perhaps a meeting that just talks about the ICRIP appeal and insurance and has an executive session with some legal counsel.
Sure.
Okay, so we could amend it to say to bring back to the board in executive session.
I would recommend at least an action publicly so that ICRIP can see if you're making any essential promises and that it's the wish of the full board, if that makes sense as well.
Trustee Glass.
So what I would like to see is the director and legal counsel work on a letter, modify it, work out a better proposal that we probably could accept. Let's have a special meeting, set an agenda, because that special meeting, we need to not only consider maybe what ICRIMP appeal is, but there should be 2 quotes being requested. If they aren't, let's do a consensus and make sure we get this, but there should be the broker that the director started with.
Yeah, that actually would be the next item right now.
Okay, but that's what the special meeting should be, to look at the whole ball of wax, what the different quotes are and the ICRIMP appeal.
Trustee Blank.
I am perfectly willing to go into an executive session if it's clearly stated beforehand, like very clearly stated. We all know what it's about. It's not a surprise if it doesn't have other things added to it. I would be willing to go into an executive session to discuss the ICRIP appeal. But if there are other things added, or if it starts getting confusing, I am not willing to go in and make executive session something other than what's really clear. I would also like to have an action item once we come out, being clear with the public what has been decided concerning the ICRIP appeal. So we would need a public vote of one sort or another.
I would recommend the 28th or 29th. The 29th is the last possible day for us to essentially engage another insurance provider, if that is the direction. So perhaps the 28th.
Okay, should we do that now or wait until we get down to that section?
If you want to make your motion so specific that it'll be that you're directing legal counsel and the director to create a draft for presentation at the board at that meeting.
I am not in town on the 28th or the 29th, but I am in town before that.
Could you do Teams if that ends up being the only day that works for us?
That would be really hard. It would be really hard. I think we are going to be on the road.
7th?
Yes, in the afternoon.
Yeah, I'm available the 27th.
I'm not in the afternoon, so
Tuesday?
I could, well, depends on how long do you think this is gonna be, how long the meeting would actually be.
The 26th.
26 is fine.
Morning of my planner for the 26th.
Morning of 27th is an option, right?
So was there a reason why it would have to be afternoon on the 27th?
I have an appointment, medical appointment in the morning.
Okay.
I could do after 3:30, but it depends on how long it, depends on when it is on Wednesday.
Thank you.
If it was in the afternoon.
I'd rather do Wednesday.
What date are we up to?
26th or 27th?
I'm open after 11 o'clock on the 26th, anytime, or anytime on the 27th.
I'm completely open.
According to my secretary at home. I'll bring my planner next time.
I will mention that we are still in the process with underwriting, so I don't have a lot of documents, and giving the insurance companies as much time as possible to get that together is important. So the closer to the 27th would be better if there's an option to give them more time.
Afternoon, 27th.
Okay, I'm available all day, the 27th.
I'm available.
After 3:30 or after 3?
Well, I have something after 3, but it can be adjusted.
Before 3? Right? Yeah,
I can do a meeting before 2:00.
oh, I
But
thought you, yeah.
I could meet at noon on Wednesday.
Okay, so noon.
1 o'clock.
One's cutting it way too close for me because I have 2 that I cannot change.
Split the difference, 12:30,
First date.
27th,
Please.
12:30.
We will confirm the location. And just to be clear on the agenda, we are going to have an executive session, and then we will have an action item, and the action item after that is going to be to approve the letter for ICRIMP or to not approve the letter for ICRIMP. Is that, and then to review any insurance quotes, and then an action item to make a decision about insurance quotes. Is that the gist of what I'll frame it, but I just want to make sure I have everything on.
Sounds good to me. Okay.
Director, do you have a clear consensus request from us to get, from 2 brokers to get the quotes? Because each of those brokers will go to 2 or 3 or 5 companies. So we should have a lot of quotes.
That actually will be the next.
Okay, I just want to make sure you got
We're
a
still on the
consensus
discussion of
to do
ICRIMP
that.
appeal letter.
Okay.
Okay, so we have consensus then on, wait, okay, so we have, okay, right.
And I would have to leave at 1:45 depending on where the meeting is actually.
Okay, so then I move,
That's a separate,
uh,
that's a separate thing.
we have a main motion on the floor.
What is the main
And
motion?
okay, so the main motion is, the board directs the library director to work with our legal counsel to file an appeal with ICRIMP prior to the deadline. And I would like to add to the end of that, to bring back to the board an executive session on September 27th at 12:30.
Who made the motion?
I did.
He made the main motion, I made the.
Are we making an amendment or are you?
So
just asking
right
to
now-
change it?
So right now, we're on the amendment. So is there any discussion on to bring,
What's the amendment again?
to bring back to the board an executive session on September 27th?
Okay, that is not a motion. That's just a,
It's an amendment to his motion.
okay, I'm sorry, I don't understand.
Okay,
Can you just ask him to change his motion a bit? I mean, this is not a full sentence. And so
yeah, amendments typically are not full. So anyway, so the amendment is on the floor. So we will be voting, the amendment is, and then I'll read the whole thing all together, how it would read if it's adopted. To bring back to the board an executive session on September 27th at 12:30. And if that is
bring back
adopted,
what?
well, actually, the chair is supposed to read it. So if the amendment is adopted, the whole main motion would read, move that the board directs the library director to work with our legal counsel to file an appeal with ICRIMP prior to the deadline, comma, to bring back to the board an executive session on September 27th at 12:30.
Sure. I don't think she brings an executive session because she brings the draft to enable us to review in an executive session.
Do we need
Okay.
an amendment for that? I mean,
Okay, so I'll change the amendment to read, to bring the draft to the board in executive session on September 27th at 12:30. So what we'd be voting on right now is just the amendment. It's not whether the main motion passes or not. It's just the amendment to bring the draft to the board in executive session on September 27th at 12:30. Yes, Director.
Clarify, I believe Trustee Hanley could withdraw his motion. Sorry. Trustee Hanley could withdraw his motion. Giving direction to the director to work with legal counsel doesn't require a motion. I'm happy to do that. Like I said, if I was allowed to speak, I would have happily, that's what would have been my suggestion as the next step. So just consensus and we'll work. And then under the section on calling a meeting, just we're adding that meeting to our special meeting to discuss an executive session. I think it's a little clearer.
That's fine.
Okay, so do we have consensus on directing the library director to work with the council for a draft, bring it back, executive session? Yes, everyone?
Yeah.
Okay.
The draft of the appeal letter to ICRIP. Let me be more specific.
Madam Chair, I would suggest that we use the phrase to report back, maybe, in case we still need to work on an appeal. If we're not at that point, we could report back. If we have a draft, we can bring a draft. I would suggest report back instead of having it be so specific.
Okay, so board directs the library director to work with our legal counsel to report back to the board in executive session on the ICRIP appeal letter. Okay, so consensus, it doesn't have to be exact word for word, just as long as everyone understands.
Do you think Mr. Hanley needs to withdraw his motion as well?
Oh, okay.
Do I read the entire motion to withdraw or just say I withdraw my previous motion?
You could probably just say that.
I withdraw my previous motion.
Okay, the previous motion has been withdrawn. All right, so, and we do have consensus already. Wait, Janelle, do you have a question?
You have a motion, you have your amended motion also.
Well, if he withdraws his motion, doesn't that negate any possible amendment to it?
I just have a
withdraw
note.
your amendment.
Okay, I withdraw my amendment. Right. Okay, so we have consensus on the board directing the library director to work with our legal counsel and report back at executive session. All right, so if there are no further comments on discussion of ICRIP appeal letter, we'll move on to the next section, which is discussion of CLN insurance policy options. Discussion. Trustee Hammond.
I would suggest that we have minimally one, if not two other quotes from other insurance companies and besides ICRIP, because there's no guarantee we're going to work things out with our appeal letter. And even if we do, we may want to look at pricing or what other insurance carriers have to offer.
Sure.
Trustee Watts.
And that was why I was requesting work with the brokers, because with a broker, they have multiple companies. So you had one broker that you'd worked with or were starting to work with. And we had suggested Redmond, who's a broker. And I would expect each of them would probably come back with 3 or 4 companies quoting. So I think we more than meet the RFQ requirement by working with brokers. So I just want to make sure now that we have a consensus among at least 3 of us to ask her to go to the 2 brokers.
Yes, I'd also support that, because it just doesn't make sense to not contact Redmond Insurance if they are reportedly, if they're competitive with ICRIP. And we were being told that other insurance might cost us 2 or 4 times what the ICRIP costs, that it only makes sense that we ought to contact them. So, so that's at least 3.
Did you want an update?
Oh, sure.
Okay. Terrific. So yesterday at 4:45, I did receive a phone call from Chair Otteson, requesting that I contact, since there was 15 more minutes in the business day, Redmond Insurance. I did so. I spoke with a young lady, and what was identified was that within our time frame of approximately 9 days, it would not likely to be possible for them to give us a full insurance quote. Moving away from ICRIMP, they are possibly able to give us an employment liability quote as a standalone policy that could be used with ICRIMP within that time frame. I will say that I spoke with them as well about what companies, their underwriter, the company formerly known as Pinehurst, which now has a new name. The broker there has identified that I filled out applications for Philadelphia and something Northwestern something. Anyways, two large companies, and the broker at Redmond also mentioned, or the clerk at Redmond also noted that those would also be the companies that they would be using for us. And she was checking with her underwriter, but again, not within the time frame that we have available. And so you will be getting at least 2 quotes back from Pinehurst, or the new Pinehurst company. And so that's where we're currently at. I know council has mentioned, and we've had a brief conversation about, usually this takes weeks and weeks and weeks. It's not uncommon for it to take 6 to 8 weeks. And so the reason why both companies are recommending these 2 insurance providers is that they have the capacity to respond to us in the time frame that we need. And so I think that is a consideration. I think also for the board's consideration is that if we do move forward with the policy renewal with ICRIMP, it's possible that we could move away mid-year or halfway through the renewal to a different company if that's what we want. So just because we commit for part of the year or the full year, so to speak, we can change insurance later as well if the board really wants further consideration from multiple companies. But at this point, I'm unable to find anybody else that can work with the time frame. And I would just point out that I've already been working with Pinehurst for 3 or 4 weeks since the day after we got that letter from ICRIMP.
Okay, well, I'm just not sure why you wouldn't have contacted Redmond with the suggestion that they would be competitive with ICRIMP instead of costing 2 or 4 times what ICRIMP costs.
So they're representing largely the same companies that would fit for our needs. And at the last meeting, again, I'd already been filling out documents and paperwork, which I've expressed is incredibly time consuming. It's been 6 to 8 hours per application. It includes, we've had to do independent work in order to get quotes. For example, we have not had a list of drivers and driver's license numbers. And so we've had to compile that list in order to even apply for an insurance policy. So they're incredibly time consuming. The request was made, I think, a week ago, less than a week ago, whatever, at the last meeting. There were only 2 trustees that mentioned that. And my recollection is that I stated I would try. I would point out that the draft letter and the documentation that I provided for insurance for the appeal has also been incredibly time consuming.
Sure.
Yes, Trustee Kloss.
So I hope you're not saying you're not going to pursue Redmond. 3 of us would like you to do that. And please talk to one of their underwriters instead of just the clerk at the front desk. I would like this to go further with Redmond than just the gal that answered the phone.
Trustee Blank?
I've never heard the 3 of us. I've never heard that. I've only heard 2 people suggesting that. So I don't know. That sounds like there's been discussion outside of this. I'm quite concerned. Well, I meant I didn't hear it previous to this meeting. Actually, I didn't hear it at this meeting either. But I'm quite concerned that we're pushing a company when we've, and that company is one that is going back to the same companies that Payne West or whatever they're doing. And, it's, we keep absolutely heaping work on a director. We keep causing problems as a board and heaping work on a director. And then, and I'm really concerned about the push for this particular company. I've never heard our board push a particular company before. And so it sounds like there might be some kind of conflict of interest for one reason or another. That's what it's beginning to sound like, to me. The time is of the essence. And Payne West as a broker has been, I don't think that the director has said that she would not. Redmond said they can't get us the stuff we need. That doesn't mean we can't continue to move on, but they can't get us the stuff we need in the time we want. And so I'm very concerned about us piling work, tons of work on our director. And not just moving forward with a company that's been very adequate for us in the past.
Trustee Robinson?
Did the director speak to just the lady at the front desk, or did the director speak to one of the actual agents at Redmond Insurance?
I believe she's an agent. She's not an underwriter. I was transferred from reception. So it is an agent with the firm. They were going to send me follow-up information and a follow-up application for the employment. But like I said, it is not possible within the time frame to get quoted another company. And her recommendation was the same two companies that Payne West was already applying for us on our behalf.
Okay, well, it just seems like if we went through a broker to go to another broker, that there's going to be some kind of fee on top of the Payne West. And to respond to your question about why this particular one, is just because we were told that our insurance is probably going to go up by 2 or 4 times what iCrimp costs. And this is an option that we have heard of that is competitive with iCrimp. So it would not cost us 2 or 4 times what iCrimp cost us. Trustee Hanning.
I'm not familiar with Redmond Insurance, but I do remember speaking, but not me, but the board as a whole, speaking about it. I think it was at the Harrison meeting we had. I do recall the director having concerns with the fact that the company had some biblical quotes on their website. That makes me wonder whether or not we're shying away from a Christian company because they might show they have biblical quotes. I have never been on their site before. I have done no business with Redmond, and I see no reason why there's no prohibition against this board identifying a specific company to be looked at in one of the quotes. So I recommend we go ahead and get a quote from them, or let them send us a letter in writing or an email that says we cannot meet your deadline and they cannot give me a quote or us a quote.
I think the director has something to say. Oh, yes, director.
I think it's important to note when I called the agent, she didn't know what iCrimp was. And I had to explain that to her. And so not having, being primarily focused at home and auto insurance and some commercial, but, Payne West is noted for their scale and their history. And again, their history with us. So because they've represented us for the last 20 years, it brings a considerable amount of information and knowledge. And this is an extenuating circumstance that we've been given, 3 weeks to do something that normally takes 6 weeks. And so having that background is really important. And so I'm concerned about how much time. So if the board wants me to make a commitment of spending 2 hours working with them or something to that amount, but I am concerned. I do have active public records requests, and there is other constraints. And now we need to plan another meeting for next week, which again takes a tremendous amount of time. And again, just to remind the board that by statute, by your job description, we should be spending 5 to 10 hours a month on board business and in board meetings. And so this continual, again, to what Trustee Blank said, there's a tremendous amount of pressure on all of our staff, not just me. And so I don't know what benefit we would have at this point having another quote.
Yes, Trustee Claus.
So to answer the question, the reason I suggested going to it is I am aware that there are other districts in the county that have gone to Redmond for ICRIMP competitive quote. That's why it came to mind for me. They've done it, and you've apparently talked to the wrong person. So please let Redmond reach out to you or try to find the right person that's done ICRIMP competitive quoting. And I think we'll make some progress, and I think it'll be faster. You've talked to the wrong person. Somebody there is very familiar with ICRIMP and competitive quoting with ICRIMP. And we had just the three of us, the chair, Trustee Hanley, and myself, say that we wanted this. It was a consensus thing. We just said it. That's where that came from. When I said the three of us, we just said that before this.
Trustee Robinson?
Motion, since you have this as an action.
Sorry, what?
I would recommend this as a motion since you have it as an action item. Other items you haven't had as.
I just wanted to, because actually it kind of goes with what Trustee just was talking about. Because the chair had also mentioned that Redmond Insurance, that you heard that they are good for this or competitive with ICRAMP. And you said, Trustee said that that you know of other districts using them. Can we at least hear who these districts are and maybe how long they've been using Redmond Insurance? And maybe you actually know, or a trustee actually knows the contact, and maybe that person should have been identified when the three trustees supposedly directed the director to contact the office. If you knew there was one person in there that they needed to talk to, maybe the director should have known that. But I would like to know what districts are using them and how this strong endorsement for them is coming about.
Trustee Claus?
So I don't know the contact person. I've never talked to Redmond. I know that another district, at least one other district, has negotiated, and I don't want to go on record because I don't know if they actually made a deal with them or not, but I know that they've worked with them. I'm just asking to talk to the right person, and I'm assuming if she contacts them, she can get directed to the right person. But I've never talked to Redmond. I don't know.
Trustee Hanley?
I would suggest that in addition to the item on the agenda before this one, the appeal letter, let that still proceed. Let us, I assume, I would recommend that the board recommend to the library director, not recommend, but direct her to give us a quote from Payne West and a quote from Redmond. I think that, and maybe if we do it by consensus, I guess that's sufficient, but I think that having three quotes in hand should give us adequate information to make a reasonable decision. I don't know what else we're entertaining besides that, and I don't really, so that's it. I just suggest we get two quotes besides ICRIMP, and one of those being Redmond, since Trustee Plus indicated they are competitive cost-wise or price-wise.
Just real quick. Yeah, just real quick. Sorry. Shoot, what was I going to say? It would have been quick if I remembered it. So is the trustee suggesting that we get these quotes, but possibly have to re-up on ICRIMP anyway, because the quotes might not be ready in time? Because we do need to have that in our minds that if the other quotes cannot be ready in time, we have to have a plan of what we're going to do with ICRIMP. And as director said, you can cancel after you re-up, you can cancel and change throughout or partial or get it refunded for the rest of the year.
we make payments for our annual premium in 2 payments. So at about that time, when you're making the second premium, if you wanted to move away.
So I just think it needs to be clear of what we're actually saying, like you want the quotes and I get that. But if they are able to be ready, because it is a bigger thing than Redmond usually does, then would trustees be okay with us re-upping with ICRIMP and looking at these quotes later?
Yeah, I don't know about government policies, but with the other insurance, like even after a month, you could just say, okay, I changed my mind and they prorate it. If we were to get insurance quotes from Redmond and they were spectacular, would we be able to cancel and have it prorated after a month or two?
So just to clarify, so what I'm just going to summarize kind of what I've heard and then tell me if I'm not understanding. So what I've understood, it is the board's intention to, and everybody felt strongly that moving forward with ICRID, if possible, was our best first option. And so now we're looking at other options if that doesn't work out. Isn't that what I heard before? So
What?
That was what we did last week.
Okay.
Okay, so yeah.
If you're done, I was interested in pursuing that, but not necessarily thinking that was our best option. I just figured that we would pursue all options and then evaluate them against each other when we had the information. So I didn't mean to give a misimpression.
So I was directed last week to to draft a letter for appealing to ICRIMP. So are you saying that that's not our intention, or we are to appeal with ICRIMP? You're going to need to pay $25,000 on October 15th if that's the direction that you're going, and you will need to commit to a policy with them for part of the year, and it may or may not be refundable in any way.
So it's a $25,000 appeal fee. I thought it was like, okay, just put that down on your insurance.
That's not correct. Wait. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll clarify, please.
Our policy premiums is approximately $50,000, and it's made in 2 payments. That first payment is due October 15th.
So you don't get to appeal if you haven't made your payment. In other words, if you're not a member of ICRIMP, you don't get to appeal. So you have to be a member, and in order to be a member, you have to pay the premium.
Sure.
Yes, Mr. Bloss. Trustee Bloss.
So that's what this special meeting is, and possible executive session. I don't even know if it's necessary to go to executive session. ICRIMP it's becoming apparent, is way too far reaching in what we would have to comply with. So I'm a lot less interested if there's a competitive commercial policy. So I say what I'm looking for is on the special meeting to lay it all out on the table, have work with legal counsel for our option with ICRIMP, have 2 brokers that have given us whatever they can at that time, and we decide in that meeting. So I am actually myself much more turned off to ICRIMP, seeing what you propose that we would have to do to be in good standing with them. They're too demanding.
Just to be clear, that was a summary for the board to discuss and consider. Again, that was just a recommendation based on the notes that I had for previous incidents or previous items. I will say, I guess to be clear, there are really 2 choices. So there is the choice to move forward with ICRIMP, to appeal, and to get a supplemental employment liability coverage. That is one choice. And then the other choice is really to go completely separately with a different insurance provider. So I want to make sure. So I also need to make clear that our coverage, we need to notify them on Friday, whatever company we go with, because the 1st is a Sunday, falls on a Sunday. And so what I heard from Redmond was that they were not able to give us a full quote in that time frame. And now the time frame is moved up to the 27th. So today is the 21st. They have 6 days to get us a full insurance quote, is what I'm now hearing, if that's the will of the board. So I do not believe that's going to be possible, even with a special contact. It has to go through underwriting. And I'm just going to explain that again, it's everything from our drivers, everything to our personnel practices, everything from our facilities, the size, the remodel, the sprinklers, the details of information that these underwriters are reviewing for our quote is going to take more than 6 days.
But you've already done it for the pain.
But you're asking for a second quote, and what I'm now telling you is that I have strong suspicion that I cannot get you a second quote, that you will get 2 quotes, one from Philadelphia and the other one from the other company, which I'm forgetting its name, but there are 2 requests that have been logged through Pinehurst that will be full insurance quotes. And I don't believe I can get any further information from another broker at this late time, since we're meeting in 6 days.
Trustee Blank?
I have a couple of questions. The coverage that you're requesting from Pinehurst, I'm just going to call them that since we don't know what their new name is, and from Redmond, is that equivalent to the coverage that we would be receiving from ICRIMP? I mean, that we have received from ICRIMP.
Yes, those 2 companies have been given our previous ICRIMP policy for the amounts of coverage, because that was what the board directed. So yes, those 2 companies will be making a proposal for our consideration. And it's the insurance liability limits that we had before with ICRIMP.
So my next question is, you said that the person you talked to would send us to the same 2 insurance companies that were all to Pinehurst. So that's very likely what's going to happen. So just because they would be coming from those quotes would be coming from a different broker, would they be less?
I have gotten quotes from insurance companies that are brokers where they had the same company as the other one, and one was significantly less.
Okay, so at this point, I haven't filled out the applications for this other company, Redmond. They have not sent me the forms. Like I said, I spoke to them last night at 5, and I just checked my email and it's 11, and I haven't received any forms from them to begin either. Again, it's important to quote apples to apples. So again, liability, deductible, and to provide the same information for getting apples to apple quotes. I do not believe I can get a full insurance proposal from any other. I have been working for 3 weeks and we still don't have it from this company, and they are constantly calling the underwriter trying to find out when it's going to come out of underwriting. So we're receiving very good service from Pinehurst, and it's still, again, I just can't express to people that don't do commercial insurance or have an understanding of commercial insurance. It's very complex and it takes weeks and weeks, and we've already pushed the provider. As I understand, other agencies in the county are also moving or considering other options besides ICRIMP. So it's a very busy time and the underwriters are busy. And we essentially, because we got our letter and I called them immediately, they've been working on it right from the beginning. So I understand that you want another quote or want another company, but I can get you an employment only quote that would go along with ICRIMP. And she has given me some assurance of that, but I do not believe I can get you anything by the 27th.
A full coverage quote.
And I had told her the 28th or 29th, and she thought she could get the employment. So I'm not even sure you're going to be able to get us the employment quote now that we've taken a day or 2 away from what I had said.
Okay. Michelle, do we have time left?
1 minute left in the current discussion, but we're way over time. We're about 10 minutes over.
Okay. All right. Well, I this is why we asked you to do this in advance, so that there would be time for the quotes. I still would like to pursue Redmond Insurance and just see if we can get a full quote out of them. And do we still have consensus on that?
Yes, I think so.
Okay, so if you could, ask them, if they can rush it, or, and, if not, then maybe we can cancel whatever policy we decide on, early, and yes, trust.
Oh, I was just gonna say, I don't have a problem getting a quote from Redmond Insurance. I just have a problem with it being rushed and maybe not, I don't think they would rush it if they thought it was not gonna be proper anyway. But if it was rushed and wasn't proper and then some sort of issue happened. So I'm fine with getting a quote from them and possibly doing it half year.
All right, well then, we will move on to.
If you're honest, and I would recommend that you notice this up as a action item with a motion.
Okay, let's write one down real quick. Or maybe,
Sure.
yes.
I move that we have our special meeting on, was it the 27th at 12:30? And in that meeting, the director brings us whatever quotes she's able to get from Payne West and Redmond and the results of the ICRIM appeal discussions with the legal counsel.
Okay, sorry, once again, I forgot to start writing that down. I will get in the habit.
And we have a special meeting on.
And that's an executive session?
Well, we can decide then if it's executive or not, depending on what it is, but it isn't, we'll try for executive if necessary. On September 27th, 12:30, to review insurance quotes that the director brings us from these two brokers. I don't know if you have to write it down. And the results of the legal discussion with, or discussion with legal counsel regarding ICRIM appeal.
Okay, did you get that, Janelle?
Can I simplify that?
Please, I'd love that.
How about plus move to add any additional insurance quotes to be provided for review at the special meeting held on September 27th, 2023 at 12:30.
Well, not just
Need to
any,
include Redmond.
I'm asking for something from Redmond and something from Payne West.
You already have consensus directing the director to get a quote from Redmond.
Right. And to bring it at this time.
Okay, sorry, could you read that slower so I can write it down so that I can read it back to the class move to?
You can always have her read it.
Oh, okay, that would be lovely.
You want me to add the specific insurance companies?
Yes.
Okay, plus move to add any additional quotes from Payne West or whatever their name is and Redmond to be provided for review at the special meeting held on September 27th, 2023 at 12:30.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so it has been so moved. Do we have any further discussion, or?
Does that include the executive?
I would just clarify that a possible executive session would be for the reason of receiving counsel and relating to the ICRIM letter. The insurance discussion would be an open session.
Yeah.
So just
But I don't think we had anything about the special session in the previous, or did we? Was that? Have we already made a motion to have a special session?
Executive session, yes.
Well, just a special session.
An executive session is a special session.
Yeah, we
Did
don't,
we do that in the last one? I thought we were told it was in this agenda, the second one.
setting meetings is not something that is required, to, for a motion. We've set a meeting, we've said we're gonna have an executive session in it. You are now have a motion on the table to add one more item to the agenda. Why don't we just do that and move on?
Okay, if there is no,
One of the, I think that if for some reason one of those two insurance companies cannot provide a quote, I think it would be good to see that in writing, meaning whether they send you an email or a letter that says, given your time frame, we're not able to give you a quote. That way we know if they determine that they can't get the quote to us in time.
okay, we could probably have consensus on that part.
The problem is you can't demand, I mean, if they won't write it, if they don't do it, we've had a lot of things here where we've asked and it hasn't happened. If they don't do it, then who's to blame? And how, it sounds like you're not trusting the staff member to our director. I mean, I'm happy to, if we receive, I'm happy to ask them for that, but if they don't do it, there's nothing that somebody can do about that.
Okay, well, we could request that letter. Do we
I
have
think that's
consensus on
fine,
that?
requested.
Okay. All right, well then, if there is no further discussion, we will vote on the motion, which is, should we read that one more time?
Class move to add any additional insurance quotes from Redmond and Payne West to be provided for review at a special meeting held on September 27th, 2023 at 12:30 p.m.
Okay, it has been so moved. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, any opposed? Okay, I thought it was unanimous. All right, it is unanimous and the motion is carried. So we will now move on to the next section, which is discussion of material selection policy. Mr. Hanley?
I was wondering, are we able to flip flop items on an agenda in terms of the sequence? Because my guess is the material selection is going to take quite a while as opposed to the resolution regarding the AOA. So I'm just curious, are we allowed to flip flop items on an agenda? And if you want to, just throwing that out.
I think usually that's done at the beginning. A person could do it mid-meeting, I believe. But I think that also we could just stop the time when it's time to discuss the ALA. Other items. Okay, so back to material selection policy. I'd like to conversation.
So is this the material selection policy or is this the, what's the other one that was sent out, future acquisition and selection of book policy?
It's all one.
Well, it says discussion of material selection policy.
So is the future acquisition and selection of book policy replacing the material selection policy?
I don't think I even saw.
I'm talking about this one, the one that looks like
the one
that and has like 5 pages.
the one that was passed out at our last meeting.
Well, I got it off of my computer.
Oh, right.
Maybe I was in it. But is that replacing material selection policy?
If you're talking about the red
Yeah.
text on it and yellow highlight, yes, that's the one I handed out at the end of the lesson. You left before we had that.
But I have it.
And then
I
it
read
was, and then it was provided electronically as a board
Yes,
packet
I have it.
today in physics, yes.
I have it. I'm asking, is that,
It overlaps right here where it says objection. It's added statement.
so it's added to material selection policy?
It's all the modifications.
Anything else? If it pleases the chair.
Would the material selection policy that's right here be like thrown out and this would be in the place of it? Or is it what another trustee just said, attached to it? I'm highly confused.
Trustee Hanley?
These are suggested changes to the existing material selection policy that's currently in effect.
Okay. Thank you.
Trustee Brink?
Yeah, that was what I was gonna say. It says here, material selection policy, that's this. and these are suggested changes. I have lots of questions. I am going to start initially with talking about something that just is not looking at the suggestions that were handed out at the end of the last meeting, but simply at the materials collection policy where the entire section of intellectual freedom, except for one sentence, was removed. And then there was some discussion on this with trustees, and trustees were saying, I heard trustees say that the words intellectual freedom came from the American Library Association. But I would like to comment on that. The words intellectual freedom did not come from the American Library Association. The American Library Association profoundly champions intellectual freedom. But I would like to read a couple of quotes about what intellectual freedom is. One of these is from the Iowa University Libraries. Intellectual freedom is the most fundamental of our personal liberties, as expressed in the First Amendment and as manifested in the freedoms of speech, press, and peaceable assembly. It is one of the cornerstones of our republic. And then I'm also just trying to look for some general. The first sentence on intellectual freedom from Wikipedia is that intellectual freedom encompasses the freedom to hold, receive, and disseminate ideas without restriction. So basically what intellectual freedom is a commitment from this library by leaving this in. It is a commitment from this library to the First Amendment.
Okay, could you wrap it up? Your 2 minutes is up.
Yes. And by taking this out, you have gutted our libraries of the commitment to the First Amendment.
Trustee Claus.
As I said in my statement at Harrison, intellectual freedom is not in the Constitution, not in the Declaration of Independence. It's an idea akin to academic freedom, where professors are allowed to teach whatever they want. Intellectual freedom is invented by librarians that say it's the right of anybody to get anything they want, and that is simply not true. We don't give them books on 100 ways to kill your parents or how to make anthrax and other hazardous materials. This library and any of the CLN libraries will not give books like that. It's a fallacy. Intellectual freedom has limits, and the Supreme Court has said minors do not have the same First Amendment rights that adults have. So I just simply don't want it in here. That doesn't mean we're not going to give information to people. I just don't want to promote ALA's promotion of intellectual freedom, which is a fallacy.
And not interested in putting it back in.
No, if you're asking me, no, I'm not interested in putting intellectual freedom back into the policy, no.
Okay, just try and make sure that get better at making sure whether we have consensus or not.
And I see you do have consensus, but when I see intellectual freedom, I don't automatically just go to some evil intent. I think of, for instance, a family that their children are highly pressured to become Ivy Leaguers, lawyers, and little Jimmy wants to be a plumber. So he gets to come to the library and he has the intellectual freedom to find books on plumbing and how to become a plumber. So I just caution people to not always look at something like intellectual freedom and automatically assume it's an evil intent. Intellectual freedom means you are free to come in and, as June always likes to talk about, how to raise a puppy. She would use that book all the time, how to groom a puppy dog. And say it's a house full of cats and the parents say you can't have a dog. That also is what it's meant for children. It's not And there are some bad people in this world that would like to use that for, improper material for children. But that's not what the intent is. I think it should stay in, but I know you already have your consensus, so.
Good to hear from you. All right, anyway, someone else have, trustee Blake?
Oh, I can wait my turn. If there's no one else who wants to say anything.
I just, my only question really is, how do we think we want to approach this process here? Do we go through as we just did now and agree or not agree that we're removing that paragraph in its entirety? And then we move on to other parts of this document? I'm not sure how, I've never edited a document as a group like this before, so I don't know how procedurally, I'm not talking about Robert's rules, what's the best way to attack this thing? I did like the idea once, it may not be with this one because it's more complex, but having a document up on a screen and we agree that we want to strike that paragraph and zip, there it goes. Well, it's not a final document yet. And when the whole thing is done, we could potentially print it out, take it home, mull it over and come back and vote on it at another time. I'm not saying we're going to do that today, but I'm just not sure how we would go about right now the editing process.
Yeah, I was just studying in Robert's rules and it was saying that you can do whole paragraphs, whole sections, one sentence, a few words. It's however you want, the board wants to approach it.
Okay.
Sure.
So, trustee Blank, were you next?
I have no
I think
idea.
you're supposed to go fors and against if you have the option in Robert's
Keep my
rules.
head facing this way so I can see everyone out in your peripheral.
What I would like to know is, where did even the initial draft changes, where the initial draft changes, not the ones that were handed out last time, where did those come from? How did this come to us? Who made these changes and choices? Take these out. I'm asking, yeah, well, that's all we can talk to.
Okay, trustee Henley, would you like to address that?
Yes, I would be happy to. I went through the document.
Wait a second, I'm not asking about that one that was handed out. I'm asking about this one as it looks right now. This is the initial material selection policy that we were looking at. I'm asking to go back to that one. There were sections taken out. Who took them out? How did that occur?
As a board by consensus.
Yeah.
We discussed them at a board meeting.
Did anyone sit down? No, it came to us before that with them out. And then we discussed it. Who went through and took them out?
Okay, well, out of the draft, we did that as a board by consensus.
No, we didn't take it out of the draft. We haven't done it. No, I was given this sheet of paper with lines through this before we, who did that?
Okay,
At some earlier meeting, if I have it correct, we agreed we wanted to strike a certain area out of the material selection policy. The library director, if I remember correctly, lined those things out and then they were put back out to the board. I don't know if they're hard copy or electronically. That's how the first swipe got done on this, if that's what you're asking, to my recollection.
Is that correct? Okay,
Yeah, actually,
okay, that it seems like that's correct. I just simply wanted that and then I have something to say.
okay, well, trustee Hand, or just trustee Claus.
Okay, I'm being shut down from finishing that. I asked the question because I had more.
Back and forth.
Okay, I didn't get my full question answered. I didn't get a chance to say the full thing. Then I was at, did anyone sit down with the director and say, what are the consequences of this? Has that ever happened, of just this first one?
I have not, because I thought that would come out over the course of time. She can put in her inputs.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know. So on this very first one, nobody sat down with the director and talked about that. Okay.
No, I didn't know that we ever did that before.
Yes, we always did that.
Okay, so Mr. Claus?
So these changes that you're looking at in the previous document have been basically in there for 2 or 3 months. You keep going through this. We already moved past this. We already answered it. I explained last meeting that I didn't want the intellectual freedom. I had struck it through on my personal version. Another trustee had struck out. The only thing that was up for grabs at that time was the first sentence about choice of library materials being individual matter for adults. And that's where we left it last time. But we've already plowed this ground. It's about all the things we wanted to remove. It was into little things like that. So where we should start is, should we strike that rest of that first sentence, the choice of library materials is an individual matter for an adults? And I would suggest that we get a summary of, maybe before we get into the weeds, what changed in this document. And from my point of view, it looks like basically the section further back here where it talks about Idaho Code 18, 15, 13, and 14, that is been struck out. Basically, that code has just been put into here. I think that is really the change that happened here, besides that first sentence about choice of library material for adults. And then there's also a statement of purpose that is new, that first paragraph above, or 2 paragraphs above objective. That's new. So that is something we should discuss. And then we should discuss whether striking the reference to the Idaho Code and actually just putting the Idaho Code in is something we want to do.
Okay, I really liked the statement of purpose and intent for policy. I thought it was kind of poetic, and I thought that it paid tribute to our librarians. I was a little bit confused on that last sentence in that section though, where it says, and it's reflective of the values of the community, and it's crossed out. Is that what you were saying the last sentence, or?
No, I was talking about under intellectual freedom, the first sentence had been left in there. It's crossed out now. Choice of library materials is an individual matter for adults. That's what I see is gone. But yeah, I don't know about this last phrase in the statement of purpose.
Well, we have about 3 more minutes left to this section. Do we want to discuss the statement of purpose and intent policy sections?
I have a question about that section.
Trustee Robinson?
The second sentence, the librarian curates and curtails a collection of reading materials for an entire community in a sense. And doing so, he or she reinforces the bedrock principles on which this country was founded. What's the in a sense part?
I think it's probably just an expectation of what a librarian does. I can live with it or without it. I don't think it changes substantially the sentence. I don't know. I have to ask around the table, but I think that that's what you are trying to do. In a sense, you're trying to do that. It's based upon supposition or I guess of what the community would want, not based on fact. So I assume that's my way of supporting that phrase.
Trustee Claus?
I would venture to say this is kind of supporting the Supreme Court Miller case where they said the library would selection policy would support community values. Maybe it could be worded different, community values instead of the community in a sense. But I think that's directly where it comes from.
Trustee Blank?
We're now obviously working off of this draft that was handed out to us at the end of the last meeting. What I would like to know is who wrote this? Who put this together? What individual put this together? It was handed to me by someone. How was this compiled? Please help me understand.
Does it matter who compiled it?
Absolutely.
Go on the merits.
Absolutely. I would like to know who compiled this. That is really important for me to know. I certainly wasn't involved, is what I'm trying to say. I don't know how this came about. I don't know if the director was involved at all. I'd like to know, where did this come from?
If we're referring to the one I handed out at the end of the last meeting.
That's the one I'm referring to.
Right. I took our policy. I went through the whole thing and suggested to myself the edits that should be made. And I distributed those because multiple trustees, myself included, like to see stuff in writing before we have to sit here and discuss it. So we have time to take it home, look at it, read it, go on ideas, make notes, and come back and have a reasonable discussion. So that's where it originated.
Okay, that sounds good. I have another question, and that is, have you had experience developing policy before of any sort?
Is she speaking to the chair or to me?
I'm asking the chair to please ask the trustee that handed this out if they have had experience developing policy. I'd like to know the experience behind developing this policy.
Okay, so we're gonna go to trustee Hanley, but it's not supposed to be a back and forth and you still reserve your time.
Okay, it says in Robert's Rules of Order that I direct questions to the chair. I am directing questions to the chair. Could you please help me understand the experience behind the person who said that they did this policy? Could you please help me understand what experience they have?
Trustee Hanley?
I'd be happy to. I've had many years of running standard operating procedures and other policies, even though, with that statement out front, I don't find that material to the action at hand right now. We're working on editing a policy, and whether I was experienced or inexperienced, it is what I wrote down. So I think we need to discuss what is in this draft rather than what my experience level was and put it in there. If something's not liked by another trustee, then feel free to criticize things you don't like.
Okay, so we need to move on, but I just wanted to say that this is not now our board draft. It was just, he passed it out so that we could consider the different parts of it and we can discuss putting different parts of this into our draft at our next meeting, I guess.
Sure.
All right.
Can I make a motion that we refer this to council so that we could vote on it next time?
We usually discuss everything first. Make sure that it's as perfected as we're going to get it before we do it, because otherwise it would be an expense and then we change something and then another expense. And so we are going to move on to discussion to disaffiliate with the ALA and its subsidiaries.
Oh, so we're completely done with this now?
For this meeting, yes.
Can I make one, ask a question? Now, next meeting, are we going to get more changes? Because every meeting, there's something new on the material selection policy, and some trustees are trying to say that the minority are keeping this from going through, but there's just, I mean, the amount of, I brought this up last time, the amount of strikes and yellow and red, and it's so confusing. Now this new one, it looks like all books in the library are under this, that nice section of definitions that I really appreciated reading. That's for adult books too? Because that's not even, that doesn't even specify, that's for children's books.
We have moved on to the next section, so we're discussing.
So I just hope there's not gonna be more changes next.
I hope so.
Next meeting.
Anyway, so discussion of materials, or whoops, sorry, done with that. Discussion to disaffiliate with ALA and its subsidiaries. Trustee Blank?
This is a question I have. When this was placed on the agenda many times ago, it was placed as a resolution. Who put this on the agenda? I mean, how did this originally get?
Okay, you keep
on our
asking that, it's already been discussed.
I don't know
We
who
don't-
put it on.
We
I don't
need
know.
To keep delaying the conversation about the actual resolution.
I'm sorry, I really believe that you are limiting debate, which I know that is something that Robert's Rules of Order or discussion. And it may be that, but you are limiting perhaps I have a dementia problem and I need to be told again, but I really don't know who put this on the agenda.
I originally put it on the agenda.
Okay, so that it was just
question,
one.
it's been answered and.
Okay, I don't want to be interrupted either. Please. All right, so one of the things that I'm very concerned about is that this agenda item came to us not as a discussion. There was no discussion about it. It came to us as an already an already firm idea that is obvious that a majority of want on here, but it was not a discussion. It was, this is what we want and we're putting it on. And I am very concerned about the fact that although we will have discussion, the resolution has been put on simply as this is what the resolution is. That is not typically how a full debate would happen.
Okay, if you're done.
I'm done.
Okay. I apologize for interrupting you before. I would refer you back to the trustee education where the chair makes the agenda.
I just was asking to be clear. I was just asking to be clear who did. I wasn't. Okay. That's all I wanted to know.
All right. Do we have further discussion? Trustee Robinson?
So my discussion on this is the radical turn it took from the original resolution. And that I see concern there. I have 3 different resolutions all about disassociating with the American Library Association. And the whereas have completely changed. They went from things that, I agree with, where the ALA is pushing Marxist ideas and, queering the catalog, all of that, to now the latest resolution, the whereas is because we want to save money. And there's no talk about the original resolution reasons. So I kind of want to know what happened there and what that means. And I assume that the chair you said you wrote up the first one. Did you write up all of them? Okay.
You can see up here at the top where it says Hanley.
Okay, so you did the first 2 and Hanley did the third?
Yes.
Okay, so that's where I'm, and I know I brought up the writing a letter to the ALA last time. I know most people weren't into that, but this is even more confusing to an organization that may think they're doing the right thing. And the original resolution told them, if they bothered to read our resolution, why we were leaving the ALA. This latest one is what I would say is kind of a made up reason to leave them. Yes, it's more of a made up reason to leave them. And if this latest one passes, I would hope that we could still write a letter to the ALA so they would at least know people are abandoning them because of the things that we don't like about them, and not it's just a monetary thing that doesn't really exist.
Trustee Glass?
So I think the confusion is the chair wrote the first one that was kind of the whereas. The second one was lifted from what Wyoming Library passed, and it was simpler. And we as a board just concentrated on that one. And then we realize that that's not the way resolutions are done. they need the whereas and.
They
resolve.
all have the whereas, all 3 copies, all 3.
Not the Wyoming board, it didn't have the short one that we were talking about.
The short one was connected to
But
a whereas.
what I would like to say is this one is superior because it keeps, yes, I would like to have said more, but it keeps us out of legal trouble. The effect is the same, and I would personally like to make a motion that we approve it. The result is we want to disaffiliate with the ALA, and we also don't want any legal action.
Trustee Henley.
After our last meeting, there were discussions back and forth whether we're going to do a resolution or a policy. And I was very gray on what the difference is between the two of those. And I think we decided to go with a resolution. And when I looked it up, I don't know which version it was of our Robert's rules, but a resolution in short term is a statement of principles. And it opens up with preparatory remarks and a position statement and so forth. And it's designed, it says in here too, that people tend to get away and like to write a lot of whereas this and whereas that and so forth to get themselves to feel good. And you're not even required to have a whereas, technically speaking. And well, why expose ourselves to potentially a libelous situation saying the ALA says this or that? Let's just stick going by the Sunday closure learning experience. I thought, well, let's cut it back and just stick to the budget because we know we don't want to. I think we do. I don't want to stay with the ALA, and I also made clear the ALA. To my knowledge, the CLN is not a member in any capacity of the ALA. We simply, one of the things we do is we probably recognize some of the events they put on, and we also pay dues. I'm assuming some of the dues to the staff. So it's cut down a lot. And to me, the meat on this thing is where it goes, therefore, at the bottom. And the fluff at the top is nice. There's no need for unnecessary exposure. And I see one area where I'd like to change where I wrote there, discussed it, said the last 3 duly noted meetings. It could just be several because it wasn't, I don't think we discussed ALA at the last 3 specific meetings. So it makes it easier to say considered and discussed at several duly noted board meetings. That would be my own edit to my own document there.
Okay, do we have consensus on, in that first paragraph, replacing 3 with the word several? I'm for it.
Yes.
All right.
At several. So considered and discussed at several board meetings.
Right, so we just be changing 3 to several.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so yes, we have consensus on that.
Do you want the duly noticed board?
I don't want that either.
No.
So I want across, it just goes across, considered and discussed at several board meetings.
Okay, so just read, whereas the Community Library Network has fully considered and discussed at several
board meetings.
You don't think that duly noticed is important in there?
I don't know. I can ask legal counsel.
Might as well just
it's important. I don't
leave
know.
it there since it's already there. Okay, so consensus on removing the words at the last 3 and in parentheses 3 and replacing it with several. Okay, yes, on me, yes. Okay, we have consensus. All right, well then, Trustee Robinson.
So another thing I don't think is clear enough is, I think it's in this, if when it talks about ALA or any of the above aforementioned entities, so all the things that are associated with ALA, I think that's a bit broad, and I don't think it's super clear. And I would like to ask of staff, if I may, the director, what the WLA, because that was mentioned earlier in the meeting, what Do you know anything about that? Is that a big organization? Is that okay if I ask?
That's a difference.
It actually doesn't, it's not germane to this discussion.
Why not?
Well,
Well, if we're getting rid of one thing for librarians to follow, and it was suggested possibly WLA could replace it. I think it is germane.
okay, could you answer it quickly, because we are almost out of time?
I have been to their website. I have reviewed some of the information. I know they have a section on reconsideration. I know they have some support. I did not find anything specifically for staff for training. So there's no conferences, there's no online seminars, there's no publishing house or like ALA editions. So, I mean, I was specifically looking for training alternatives for staff, and I did not find anything like that. I did not find a code of ethics, also something that is a key consideration for trustees and staff. So I don't believe at this time it replaces it. It does give a different viewpoint, but I don't believe it replaces for staff the majority of what they need.
Okay.
And if I could just, I also had some concern, and I mentioned it last time a little bit about what ALA affiliate subdivisions and subsidiaries are. It does seem broad to me as well. And staff and I did look at listings of current affiliates, and there were 28 listed on the ALA site. So I just want to make sure that it's either noted that its affiliates is listed by ALA on their website, just so it's clear for staff, so that we don't get into any issue with not being compliant with the board's wishes. I would also add that I have concerns that the affiliate might also include the Idaho Library Association. And so I guess if it's a resolution to disassociate with the American Library Association and the Idaho Library Association, which I understand is a chapter of the American Library Association. So by combining, I mentioned before, staff recently went to Pacific Northwest Library Association. I also believe that that may be considered an affiliate. And so, or at least there were funds that were given to them at one time in the history. And so again, my concern is, where are staff going to be receiving training of any kind? What conferences are they going to be? What library specific information? So to the trustee's point, I think it should be more clear what the board is banning or prohibiting staff to do.
Okay, so we could insert the words as listed on the ALA website after the word affiliates and that.
And then I would also, again, PNLA and ILA are not necessarily listed as an affiliate, but ILA is, I believe, a subchapter. And then, like I said, there was some question that I brought to your attention that PNLA did receive funds to keep operating. So.
So do we have consensus on adding as listed on the ALA website after the word affiliates? Yes? Yeah. Okay, so we have 4 yeses. So as listed on the ALA website will be inserted after the word affiliates.
And just so we can be very clear for the staff, what if a staff member, whatever level, decides to on their own be very affiliated with the ALA? Do they have to hide that? Is that something that they're going to be afraid they're going to get fired over? Or is this simply a policy saying that CIN monies will not be spent on it? I think it's important for the staff to know that if they personally want to go out and be members, it's okay.
Sorry, Mr. Trustee Hammond.
It would be my understanding, staff are free to join or not join any organization they wish. I think we're saying basically, as an organization, the entity, the CLN, is not participating and promoting materials and other items in here and celebrations or whatever happens to be ALA. So I think that individuals can join or not join whoever they wish, and I don't think they should be encouraged or discouraged either way.
Okay, so I do like this one much better, and I don't want to drag this out further. It's already been months. So if it is permissible I move that we approve Mr. Hanley's ALA resolution as amended.
The date at the bottom, so, sorry. I'm sorry, the date at the bottom says the 15th, so in the
Okay,
amended and
Mr.
approved,
Hanley-
or whatever today's date is, it 21st? I believe it is, so just change the date to the 21st. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Where at?
Right here.
Very
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so before that, okay, so we have consensus to change it to September 21st, the very last sentence
Yes.
instead of, okay. Okay, so if it is permissible, I move that we approve Mr. Hanley's ALA resolution as amended, that he passed out at our last meeting and emailed to the board by the director if there are no objections from our attorney.
There were changes that were made.
That's why I said as amended. Okay.
Discussion. I still had a couple of issues.
Oh, okay.
I had some question about the line, no money spent on informational services, materials, events, promotions, or campaigns.
Which paragraph?
It's the last one. It's not clear to me how informational services is defined. So what is that? For a librarian, what the definition of information services may be different than a trustee, so it's just not clear. There's a little bit of question about, are we still, I guess, handling, or the ALA professional code of ethics, is it impacted by this resolution? So I just have some question about that. And then the library typically does honor some items, campaigns like Children's Book Day, Library Card Sign Up Month, National Friends of the Library Month, National Library Outreach Day, National Library Week, or National Library Workers Day. So I just wanted to make sure that so you're talking about all campaigns, not just Banned Book Week or any specific campaign.
Sure.
Oh, yes, trustee Fox.
Yeah, my interpretation of informational services or any of these campaigns is if it's on the ALA website, we shouldn't be going and looking at the ALA website at the library. We shouldn't be joining in on any campaign the ALA has. Let's make our own. Call it something else, membership month or something. I don't want to see any directly lifted ALA information being used at the library.
I mentioned ALA editions is something, purchasing library books from the ALA editions. They're a publishing house. They don't necessarily have, is that something that we can purchase, or is that something that we're being prohibited from purchasing?
I don't want money going to the ALA. I think they promote a lot of really bad things for children in general.
So if we buy secondhand ALA books, is that okay? Then it didn't go to them, like our funds? I mean, I guess I'm just trying to clarify, because there is a lot of information services like books that are relevant to our profession.
Mr. Hanley, will you?
I was just wondering if it would be recommended that we ask legal counsel for any fine-tuned wordings or interpretations, if that's wise.
I'm happy to respond to any questions as they arise. I mean, the ALA editions books is something I have to dig in with the director a little bit. But my understanding is that this is a budgetary item, that we're not going to be expending money to the ALA organization or any of its affiliated organizations, not necessarily a procurement issue.
Trustee Blank?
If it's a money issue, that's one thing. It's very clear. We don't spend money, but not allowing the library to purchase. I think we need help. This looks like censorship to me. Absolutely, completely. When we are not able to use anything from a well-known library association that supports many things besides things that this board is uncomfortable with. Many other very important things for libraries, and now you're including absolutely everything. I am really worried about the whole issue of censorship. We are not allowed to say this. We are not allowed to talk about this. We are not allowed. That sounds like censorship.
Sorry, Director, you have 1 minute and then we need to make a motion to extend the meeting.
I would just express that I'm a little concerned about a trustee's comment stating what staff can search on the internet in the workplace. Generally speaking, we have filters and things like that, but other content-based decisions coming from a board is a little bit concerning. And I would maybe refer you to counsel on that one.
Okay, it is 12:30, so I move to extend the meeting to 12:40.
We better get on to the other stuff.
Aye, but I have to leave at 12:40.
Okay,
Aye.
Aye.
okay, so it is unanimous and the meeting is extended to 12:40. All right, I have already made a motion. Well, actually, I guess you could make a subsidiary. I was going to call the question. Do that.
Am I kind of move to go ahead and vote on this resolution?
Yeah, we already have a motion on the floor.
Okay. I have no further discussion then.
Okay, well then I move to call the previous question. So we'll be voting on that first, which just means that we end debate and go directly to that. So it has been moved to call the previous question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Nay.
I'm sorry, which question were you moving on?
Call previous question just means that we end debate and we
Oh, yeah.
go to the original motion.
Aye.
Okay, aye. Okay, so the ayes have it and the motion is carried. Then we will now go to the main motion without further debate, which is I move that we approve Mr. Hanley's ALA resolution as amended that he passed out at our last meeting and emailed to the board by the director if there are no objections from our attorney.
I would like a roll call vote, please.
Okay. We will have a roll call vote. Mr. Bloss?
Aye.
Trustee Robinson?
Abstain because I don't think that it's clear enough.
Trustee Blank?
Nay. It's not clear enough.
Trustee Addison votes aye.
Hanley, aye.
Okay, the ayes have it and the motion is carried.
Are we sending this to council?
Yes.
Okay, that sounds really important.
So we approve the Mr. Hanley's ALA resolution as amended that he passed out at our last meeting and emailed to the board by the director if there are no objections from our attorney. All right. Okay, so our next item is committee report. Mr. Hanley, the director evaluation policy committee report.
Right, I was assigned as a subcommittee, myself and Trustee Plus. We have not met the two of us together yet. I have been collecting data. I have a physical file at home, and I'm collecting information on how to different forms and the policy on a performance evaluation for the library director. So it's still in a data gathering mode, and I would say most likely I probably have a draft probably available for the next regular meeting, CLN meeting.
Okay, Trustee Blank.
I just would like to remind us all that committee meetings need to be publicly announced and board members need to be, it needs to be put in a place where people can come and attend per the open meeting law.
Okay, I have a question for council. So is that the case if you have a committee of two?
Typically, the law states that anyone who is making recommendations to a board, which could result in a decision for an action item, could constitute, would be required to follow open meeting law. So it doesn't just include trustees. It could be two members of the public you appoint to work on the evaluation policy.
Okay.
Just so that it's not secret, I'll call it, I'm not doing any secret stuff. I didn't go to council here. I emailed the Idaho Attorney General's office asking if we were required to have an open meeting, announce it, make it public, have minutes taken. And then I got an answer back that said to refer to the county prosecutor's office. So I emailed them. I did not get a response yet, but if it if it tells us we don't need an open meeting, do you want me to bring it back to council?
Yes.
Well, that'd be great, but the local prosecutor or the state AG would be the one that would investigate and take action on it. And so it would be fairly authoritative guidance unless there was another challenge, and then a court could decide. So my general recommendation would be to take the more conservative, more cautious approach, so that way we don't end up in litigation. If there's any question, I would go recommend conservative approach.
Okay, and that seems to align with page 4, I think, of the open meetings. It says, when in doubt, make it an open meeting, or something to that effect.
Okay, Director?
And I can just say, I can notice, since there's 2 trustees requesting a meeting, I can notice it, and then I take notes as the secretary as well. So one of you just need to tell me when you meet. I can arrange the room and we'll take notes. And your bylaws do say that the committee reports need to be monthly or at the regular meeting. And so that was why this item was on there, so.
All right, well, if there are no further questions, we'll move on to the discussion of future agenda requests. Trustee Blank.
I have, 2, agenda requests. One is the Robert's Rules of Order that we have the ability to have some discussion about it because I have concerns about it. The paper that was presented by the chair, I would like that to have some time to talk about that. The other thing that I would really like to talk about is I would really like our attorney to be able, because we are coming head right up against First Amendment issues concerning our material selection policy. I would like our attorney to be able to give us some kind of a workshop or the way our previous attorney did for new trustees on First Amendment and how important that is as trustees. As trustees, we are required to protect all of our taxpayers from First Amendment violations. And so and I'm not going to read it because of time, but at a meeting, Mr. Boyles did state some very positive things concerning the First Amendment. And so I would really like to request him give us a board training for a short period of time, as our previous attorney did on the First Amendment and how it affects us as trustees of a public library.
Okay, so by consensus, we'll start with the last question, I think the attorney workshop on First Amendment sounds good.
Sounds good.
Okay, by consensus, that will be on our next agenda, our next regular meeting. And Robert's Rules Trustee Education. Do you guys want that on the agenda?
Is that a discussion or?
Yeah, I think so.
I don't care to spend any time on it. It's pretty clear.
We will be using rules that I'm unclear about, and I want to discuss them as a board, and I'm very unclear about them, and I can't believe that we can't, I have no idea why we wouldn't put this on the agenda. Because there are real concerns about that, and I think that the attorney needs to be present while we talk about those.
I don't mind putting it on the agenda if it's short. I think that we should all go home and look through the references that I provided, just so everyone could satisfy their curiosity. Because it may be that after looking it up in the original format,
Then it will just take a minute.
Okay, so.
Fine with that.
Okay, so by consensus, we'll give that a few minutes on the next regular meeting. Did you?
Yeah, I have one.
Okay.
I would like to have a couple minutes on the agenda to talk about adding to the Boyles invoice. I don't know if it's called invoice, but who requested or who was on the telephone call, like Stevens Clay had and like Lake City Law has, so people can keep a rolling record in their own brain of who's using the attorney's time and for what. So I would just like that to be added to the invoice from Colton Boyles.
I
And that would be an action item, I guess. I don't know. Or maybe that would be consensus. I don't know.
Maybe you
Trustee Block.
I don't think this belongs here. That's your personal view that the invoice should say that. My personal view is it's attorney-client privilege, what he's doing. And it's with, as a board, maybe we can know, but I don't know why staff and the public needs to know or what he's doing in that kind of detail. It's attorney-client privilege with the board. And
Well, the last attorney didn't.
well, maybe
see it
they
that way.
did, but I don't think
They
it's
didn't see it
required.
that
I
way.
don't want to spend
It may
any
not be
time.
required. I'm just asking it to be put on the agenda so that we can
No, I
actually.
don't want to spend time talking about it.
Okay, it's the end of our time. Do we have a motion to extend the meeting?
Oh, did we get consensus for my?
No, we haven't yet. That's why we need to
Okay.
extend the meeting. Is to finish
Yeah, I
discussing.
gotta go.
Let's just
Uh,
adjourn.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to mention that the Idaho Commission for Libraries was coming, the Board of Commissions and commission staff to Wednesday, September 27th to Post Falls at 5 p.m. So with the board's permission, I can post a notice and send details if anyone wants to attend. It would be a tour of Post Falls, meeting the commissioners, and then dinner afterwards.
Yeah, sure. Send out
Okay.
the information.
I'll send out the information and I'll notice it as a special meeting. And that way we can.
Oh, it's a special meeting. I thought you were saying it was just something that we could attend if we wanted
It
to.
would be a tour and then a essentially social event, but I think in the best practice, it would be good since more than 2 people might come, or there may be discussion with commissioners or anything, that it be noticed as a meeting.
Don't have any objection to that.
Okay.
If more than 2 board members are going to come, it's not a bad idea.
Okay.
It will just have tour and dinner offsite. Okay, it won't have any action item or anything.
Okay, I'm for sending out the information and okay, we have consensus on it. That's okay for her to send out the information. All right, then I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
All right, it's been moved that we adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Okay, the ayes have it and we are now adjourned. Thank you.